Good evening. I'd like to call this February 9th, 2022 meeting of the City of Manassas Park Planning Commission to order. The time is 7 p.m. My name is Lester Finkel. Sitting this evening are Martha Collier, John Evans, Alana Mensing, and Michael Beckett's. Before I go any further, I'll read for the record. Per the General Assembly's approval of the Governor's amendments to the biennial budget, the governing body and or the Planning Commission may now meet electronically without a quorum actually assembled in a single location and without the in-person Planning Commission members voting on the participation of those who are remoting in. The following benchmarks for the meeting this evening have been met. First, the Governor has declared a state of emergency for the current COVID-19 pandemic in accordance with the Code of Virginia. Second, the declared emergency makes it impractical or potentially unsafe for the Planning Commission to assemble in a single location, and guidance from state and federal governments support this determination. Therefore, the Planning Commission will be meeting with various members participating electronically through GoToMeeting. Third, the meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations, in this case of the Planning Commission. Fourth, the Planning Commission will make available a record or transcript of the meeting on its website in accordance with Code of Virginia. Fifth, notice has been and will continue to be provided to the public using available methods. Lastly, we have made and will continue to make arrangements for public access through electronic means, including the ability to comment. Just for the record, all commissioners are present. Commissioner Mensing, may I ask you to do the invocation, the moment of silence, pledge allegiance?
Sure.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next agenda item is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as is?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Next agenda item is adoption of minutes from our January 12th, 2022 meeting. Are there any changes that anyone has noticed for the meeting minutes? Seeing none, would anyone care to make a motion to adopt the meeting's minutes for January 12th, 2022 meeting as is?
So moved.
Motion, second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Just for the record, any members of the public present? Okay, thank you. So our new business this evening, we have a public hearing regarding Comprehensive Plan Amendment CPA number 22-02, Urban Development Area UDA designation. I'd like to open the public hearing. The time is 7:05. Who will speak for the city? Okay, sure, take your time.
Okay. Can everyone at home see that?
Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission. My name is Steve Hall, I'm the Transportation Program Manager here in Manassas Park. This evening for your consideration is CPA number 22-02, Urban Development Area Designation within the city. The purpose of this amendment and the issue for consideration this evening is to consider amendment to the land use chapter, the future land use map, and the transportation and mobility chapter of the city's comprehensive plan. The purpose here is to classify the City Center Redevelopment District also as an urban development area UDA pursuant to Virginia Code Section 15.2-2223.1. What is an urban development area? The Code of Virginia, that code section 15.2, states that a comprehensive plan may include urban development areas. An urban development area per the state code is defined as an area designated by a locality that is, one, appropriate for higher density development due to its proximity to the transportation facilities, the availability of public or community water and sewer system, or developed area, and two, to the extent feasible, to be used for redevelopment or infill development. Any locality in the Commonwealth can incorporate a UDA in its comprehensive plan. It is not mandatory, it's optional. The boundaries must be identified in the comprehensive plan as well as on the future land use map. If adopted, it is required that the city move to re-examine the boundaries every 5 years and revise them as needed. It's also required that, if adopted, that principles of traditional neighborhood design are incorporated in any urban development area, such as a pedestrian-friendly road design, mixed-use development, and connectivity of road and pedestrian networks. In Chapter 11 of the Comprehensive Plan, Land Use and Urban Design, as you're well aware, this classifies all properties in different land use categories across the city. It also identifies the desired future land use of the city. The categories of land use within Manassas Park include commercial, recreation, public and utilities, private institution, single and multifamily residential. The future land use map is really the map for the next 20 years. It shows the locations of these designations across the city. There are 3 redevelopment districts also within the city: the Connor Center District, the City Center Redevelopment District, and Four Corners. As you know, the chapter concludes with goals, objectives, and action strategies. The focus this evening is the City Center Redevelopment District. This has been identified by staff. We've coordinated with the city attorney and internally, and identified this as a potential urban development area. From the comprehensive plan, it's identified as a vibrant hub of community and commercial activity and a great place. Other elements of the plan, the City Center Redevelopment District's purpose is to strengthen the economic vitality of the city. It will have mixed-use, transit-oriented development. It's very big on pedestrian walkways and sidewalks. Streetscape enhancements will be part of the City Center redevelopment, and it is subject to urban design elements in the comp plan, Appendix A. Looking at the requirements for UDA designation under the state code, the City Center Redevelopment District does meet that. In Attachment A of your agenda packet, we are proposing 3 amendments. On page 3, at the bottom, highlighted in red. Very straightforward. We do have a few action strategies also proposed, but the city center shall also be classified as an urban development area UDA pursuant to section 15.2-2223.1 of the Code of Virginia. Page 12 at the top, a new action strategy, 4.6. Coordinate with the Virginia Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment to update VTrans, the Virginia Statewide Transportation Plan, and establish locally identified transportation needs for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, circulation and access, safety, transit enhancements, and access to locally designated UDAs pursuant to Commonwealth Transportation Board policy. Page 13 of page 13 of the comprehensive plan shown in Appendix A. Action Strategy 10.5. Seek funding opportunities to encourage pedestrian mobility and bicycle use within the UDA, particularly in the immediate vicinity of the VRE station. Here you do see the future land use map, the entirety of Manassas Park. As stated, different colors represent different land use designations. The light blue in the immediate center of the map depicts the City Center Redevelopment District. As you can see, we did not actually recreate the map. We added a text box indicating that that blue area would also be designated as an urban development area. And that was attachment B of your packet. Attachment C of your packet also adds a text box to the inlay map of the City Center Redevelopment District. Also beneath it indicates urban development area. And this would meet the needs of the state code. Also being proposed as amendments this evening, we have the Transportation and Mobility Chapter, Chapter 12 of the Comp Plan. This chapter looks at existing transportation alternatives and systems within the city, both from motorized and non-motorized perspective. Various sections include streets and highways, multimodal solutions, and a small area focus. Again, concluding with goals, objectives, and action strategies. The proposed amendments to the Transportation and Mobility Chapter, this is attachment D, page 10 of the chapter. This is the text. In addition, the city's designation of the City Center Redevelopment District as an urban development area will allow for increased opportunities to promote transportation-efficient land use and land development patterns to help reduce the impact of growth on the transportation network. The UDA encourages walkable, bikeable, and mixed-use places to attract development and spur local economic growth. Again, attachment D, 3 new action strategies we're proposing in the Transportation and Mobility Chapter. Action strategy T1, 3, 4, seek funding from the Virginia Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment, OIPI, their Growth and Accessibility Planning Technical Assistance Program to conduct multimodal planning within existing or planned UDAs or growth areas. Action strategy T1.3.5, update VTrans, the state's transportation plan, to identify capacity needs and improvements in the Manassas Park UDA. Action strategy T1.3.6, seek funding for identified capacity needs and improvements in VTrans through Smart Scale. Impacts of this comprehensive plan amendment to the UDA designation. There is no direct impact to city services. This is primarily a paper exercise with some amendments to encourage the designation and also act upon that. There will be no direct traffic impacts as well. Something interesting about moving forward with the amendment, it will open up other opportunities. Staff will be able to work with OIPI, the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment, to identify needs on local streets as opposed to major thoroughfares. Right now, unfortunately, we cannot identify needs on local streets. It is only the major thoroughfares such as Route 28 and some parts of Manassas Drive that can be eligible for Smart Scale funding. So working with OIPI, we can identify needs for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, circulation and access, safety, transit enhancements, and access to transit. There is the OIPI Growth and Accessibility Technical Assistance Program that can seek funding opportunities and provide funding opportunities for additional planning studies within the city center district. Other potential grant opportunities as a result of the designation, Smart Scale. Again, as mentioned, we can look at local streets as opposed to major thoroughfares or Smart Scale money. Transportation Alternatives Program. This would be more highly regarded given the fact that it's a UDA and the Transportation Alternatives application, and then other state, regional, and local programs. The staff recommendation for this comprehensive plan amendment from your packet, the proposed UDA comprehensive plan and future land use map. Amendments are essential to providing the city with the tools necessary to seek future funding for local roads and to maximize its return on investment in the village of Manassas Park development. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the governing body approval of comprehensive plan amendment CPA 2202. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions from commissioners?
I have a question.
Sure. Martha?
The funding that you identified, is that grant funds? Do we have to apply for it? And do we meet the qualifications to apply?
Yes, ma'am, we would. We do meet qualifications for Smart Scale presently on Route 28, as well as a small segment of Manassas Drive. However, currently, any of the local roads in the city, such as those in the immediate city center and other parts of the city, would not be eligible for Smart Scale. The technical assistance funding we also are eligible for, but given the UDA designation, we would be more likely to receive those funds, and they are grant funds, yes, ma'am.
And the likelihood of getting it is?
Smart Scale can be a difficult funding application, I will say. I do feel highly confident that we could obtain some planning funds, certainly through the OIPI process, but also just by amending the state transportation plan and getting certain elements in there for walkability, for pedestrian enhancements, that will go a long way in future applications when we can refer back, to the state's transportation plan and say, yes, the city of Manassas Park, needs sidewalk treatment, needs new curb and gutter, needs trails and pedestrian amenities. So I am confident in certainly the ability to get planning funds. Now, the smart scale applications, typically, from my understanding, very few get funded the first time. It's as you continue to apply and there's more support behind applications, you're more likely to receive funding, so.
I guess I have one more then.
Sure.
Every response brings another question. Who is responsible for maintenance in the future? Where's the funding for that? Is that ours, or can we get money from somewhere else?
Well, for maintenance, I guess it's two-part. For administration of a grant, that would be my responsibility as the transportation manager, but any construction of road facilities within the city would be the city's responsibility.
So any curb replacements and painting and such as that would be ours to eat?
That's correct. And
Okay.
if it's in the city's network, we do receive funding from VDOT to maintain our own streets.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
there
we
are-
receive roughly $750,000 each year from VDOT to do maintenance of our roads. As we add new roads, they calculate that mileage addition for additional funds. If we're just improving roads, then no. But it would be part of it. It's part of the ongoing funding for maintenance, and then
Yeah, good.
and then
Thank you.
we utilize heavily the MBTA fund as well, the 30% dollars to do annual CIP street repairs and upgrades as well.
I
Good,
guess
thanks.
one item worth mentioning too, I did express this in the staff report. The planned city center development and the redevelopment that's occurring here, nothing is going to change with that, with this designation. The streets, the pedestrian areas, the internal circulation, nothing is going to change, and those elements were already planned to be maintained by the city. So this designation would not change that.
Thank you.
Other questions?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. And just for the record, I'm not aware of any members of the public being present or on virtually who want to speak regarding this application. Okay, I see none, so thank you very much. That's great. Then if there are no other questions, then I'll close the public hearing. The time is 7:18. And if there is no discussion, I will offer a motion. I will offer for a motion. Recommendation of approval to the governing body for CPA number 22-02 UDA designation. Anyone care to make a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Very good. So now we're for the 7B part of our meeting this evening, a public meeting. It's for FY23 to FY27 Capital Improvement Program. There will be no action regarding this, but it'll be the full presentation. So I will open the public meeting at 7:19. And sure, take your time, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission.
Good evening.
As we do every year now, in compliance with state code and city code.
Good.
We're here to present the capital improvement plan of the city for the next 5 fiscal years. We're also really focusing on FY23, those items that will definitely get or propose to be appropriated as well for funding as well. And then your all's job, of course, is to review this, ask us any questions, and then recommend any changes you would want, or any projects you would want the governing body to consider and approve your own CIP. If there's any changes or no changes to recommend to the governing body for approval. I just want to note that tonight I'm not going to go over the CIP projects that are funded by ARPA. It's a federal source of funding that we received. That was separately approved as a separate budget process with the governing body. However, at your next meeting, I will go over that personally, the actual ARPA-funded projects as well, just for your awareness to better inform you of what's not in here, because you may notice some projects from last year are no longer
Gotcha.
in the CIP because we're using ARPA funds for that. So
Okay,
just
cool.
want to start off with that. I'm going to kick it off tonight with an overview of the five-year model for the general fund and for both enterprise funds, and then I'm going to hand it off to the different departments to brief their slides. You'll notice some jumping around, so please bear with us. I'll brief a slide here, there. Calvin will brief some slides, Chris. So we'll kind of be moving around. Once it gets to schools, it gets a little bit simpler with our schools colleagues, Eric and Neb online, to brief that, along with then transportation, Calvin, police, Chief Lugo, fire, I believe, Deputy Chief Jones, Parks and Rec Jay, and then to round out the night, Calvin, to discuss a lot of projects. So just like the regular budget, the CIP is strongly influenced by Calvin's department, not just for the community development portion, but you'll see tonight with the transportation projects as well. So when I get done with my part, I will sit down and we'll have someone else help to flip slides. So everyone at home, when we get to your slides, just please tell us when to click next so we can proceed to the following slide. So I do want to point out though with the ARPA for FY23, it's about an extra $2.8 million that's not going to be here. And then for the 5-year period, it's about $7.6 million. And there's some pretty big projects in ARPA, including smart meters and ERP, that are missing from this. But again, I'll go over that with you all at your next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the 5-year CIP model, just for the general fund, not for the water and sewer fund. But what you can see here, there's about $46.1 million over the 5-year period. If you looked at last year, it was about 33 million, so you'll notice, hey, what's going on? It's a pretty big jump there.
Yeah.
But what's driving this is actually the transportation side of things, where it's about close to $6 million more in FY23 for transportation projects. And then across the life there of the 5 years, it's about $13 million more in transportation. So we're a lot more aggressive right now in pursuing grants and other programs to fund our transportation needs. So that's been a big priority of the governing body, and we want to do all we can to try to secure grant financing, existing funding out there to help implement some plans, and you'll hear about that tonight when we get to the transportation section. But everything else is pretty much relatively the same. You'll see FY23 for the model last year. Police is down slightly from this year, right? As we kind of moved things around to different years. Everyone else is pretty much flat or slightly decreased. And then over the following, the whole 5 years, it's kind of relatively flat for all departments with some modifications. Definitely the software spending is down on the admin side because we shifted some of those over to the ERP from ARPA instead of planning it here in the CIP. So overall, we're trying to keep the budget as close to the model as possible. You will see, though, some exceptions, especially with Parks and Rec. We've identified some new projects, and of course, just with inflation, we are seeing some rise in costs as well. Across the board, but mainly we mainly saw with Parks and Rec, and then with community development with some of their equipment as well. There's certainly construction projects are going to be a little bit more expensive going forward. So overall, we're kind of sticking with the model as best as we can. And this just kind of summarizes what I've just stated. You can see kind of and that's a typo on top. I'm sorry, it should be I'm sorry, no, it is not a typo. That includes schools as well. So this previous slide does not include schools in the total. The next one does, and that's the reason for the change. So you can see right up front, 23.3 million out of this, 47% is for transportation projects. It was about 27% last year instead of 47%. So you can see it went up by 20 percentage points in terms of share. Facilities and grounds was down about 1 million for this year, so about a little bit less spending on facilities and grounds this year. And then everything else is pretty much stable, except again for Parks and Rec, which you'll see tonight, which we did have some additional projects that we wanted to add. Police was slightly down. Schools was down by about 100,000 from last year's model. Fleet has gone up a little bit, but that's just from the program itself. It escalates each year, but you'll see kind of the 10-year roll-up is still a lot less than what it would have been had we not transitioned to the new enterprise program. And then administrative technology, most of that's flat. Once we did pull out some of the ERP stuff from the CIP. In water and sewer, it's about $2 million less total spending this year, and the biggest source for that is the smart meters. Two big sources. One is the smart meters. We pulled that out from this CIP and moved it over to the ARPA, and then the second one was we moved it out of the CIP and moved to the ARPA CIP, and then the ERP. The utility fund had a lot of components that are ERP related, and now that since that's being funded by ARPA, we pulled that out of this CIP. So about $2 million less in water and sewer capital spending, which is good news. We'll plug that into our 10-year financial model and see kind of what that does in terms of revenues, in terms of rates, water and sewer rates. The plan had been to start increasing rates. The rates have not increased for a very long time. We know that's not sustainable. Hopefully ARPA gives us a cushion to kind of further delay those increases if feasible, but a lot of that's also going to depend on tap fee revenue, which unfortunately continues to be a little bit delayed as well in terms of receipt. No real change in kind of our debt picture. We did do some refunding, so we are programming that in, but it's not too much of savings in terms of water and sewer debt over the 5 years. Over a 10-year period, you will see that debt start dropping pretty dramatically as you get to the tail end of the decade. Not a lot of changes here. Again, you'll see the savings on this one if you want to compare this to last year's, really from the infrastructure maintenance and upgrades. Really, it's the upgrades component where we pull the smart meters project out of this CIP and move it to ARPA, and then again for other categories, that's where you're going to see less spending on IT software from a water and sewer perspective. Stormwater, this one was the most consistent. Only thing that quote unquote went up is just we have an extra year of debt, so we're forecasting the issuance of debt. It may be sooner, it may stick to the FY25. We're looking at different vendors right now, or specifically one that could do this, all of our TMDL requirements and set up a financing plan with them, so we may avoid having to issue debt, but we know that the clock is ticking for us to reach our the goals set by the EPA and DEQ for us to meet our stormwater requirements. So all this budget data just shows an extra year of debt from last year, and that's why it went up by about $500,000. Other than that, not a lot of changes. We're hoping to figure out ways to conduct the stream restoration at a much lower cost. Again, we are in talk with vendors, and there may be a change coming for that stream restoration project in terms of location and cost as well. But until we get that, I really don't want to talk about that without being 100% certain. But we are hoping to bring that number down. So total CIP, again, this is $13 million higher from last year, and you can see that mainly came from transportation. Everything else is relatively flat or slightly down, like water and sewer being down slightly, police and fire down slightly, schools down slightly, Parks and Rec went up slightly from last time, but other than that, most things are either flat or less, and that's what we're going to go over tonight, so you can kind of get a project by project overview. But again, if you look at last year's and you see a $13 million increase, it's all from transportation, and you'll see that when we go over the transportation items. And a lot of those are kind of aggressive planning projects that we're going to assume we get grant funding for, and if we don't get grant funding for, unfortunately we can't do it, but we want to be pretty aggressive in forecasting that out. Good. Okay, so now we'll go into the projects by detail. We'll start kind of with overhead for the city, administration, IT, and general services. We'll quickly move to the registrar. There's no updates from last year, so we can pretty much move on very quickly from that slide, and then we'll turn it over to schools to start briefing the departmental section. So starting it off with admin and IT, I will turn it over to Chris, if you can hear us.
All right, thank you. So just to also kind of iterate a little bit what Laszlo previously talked about, a lot of our initial plan was to bake in the ERP, and a lot of that has been itemized out and moved over to ARPA funding. So what that does is create kind of like a leftover list of functionalities that we're looking at in terms of addressing needs for streamlining processes administrative in the city, but also just note that some of these functions could also move out into the future ERP. It's just we're not 100% certain of whether that will be included in the new ERP. So we're leaving it here as kind of a plan B if it's not part of that overall solution. So just kind of going down the list for FY23, and we'll also be selecting the ERP, or at least going into that phase in the beginning of FY23. So this will all kind of marry up to have a nice whole decision on where the city should actually select the different functionalities and the different vendors to meet its needs. Top of the list, just quickly go through these. Agenda creation, that's more for the departments to be able to collaboratively build agenda items and grade out them before they're approved and going forward in the packets. And that's across the board for all agenda types for commissions and the governing body, as well as a meeting management type tool. If you can manage, it's kind of the clerk-based functionality, so a lot of the ability to earmark, timestamp different parts of the meeting, be able to earmark votes, and also log it into a video-based kind of documented database, so we can post it in our city website, and citizens and residents can go into that and go to the specific section of the meeting where something was talked about, so it's easy to recall what was talked about during the meeting. Mathis Outbound Communications is pretty straightforward. It's a centralized output tool for all city communications, kind of combines social media, push notifications, emails, you name it, kind of all modern communications capabilities. So if we need to get something centralized and out, it's easy for our communications team to manage that process and also document what was put and where. Citizen request management, this is going to be a continuation of the city's priority of engagement. We've already started with our code enforcement reporting tool. This would be kind of an extension of that, but not necessarily things that are code related. It's kind of a general intake. Right now we do have sections on our website that you're able to at least put requests in, because they're kind of still manually managed on the background. This would create kind of like a 3-1-1 reporting type system for all staff to be able to take inputs from citizens and be able to process and give them feedback and kind of what's going on with their request to the city. Finally on the slide, the advanced smart water meter reader infrastructure. Like I mentioned, the hardware component type, that's all of the physical, the actual sensors that are out there and installed in the city. This would be kind of a centralized tool that is collecting all of that data, instantaneously reading it, providing that water usage analysis. It provides that front-end portal so citizens go in and monitor their daily usage if they wanted to. And then also the utility billing portion of that could be included in this solution. If it is not, and we decide to move that utility billing solution part of our ERP, that might lower that cost there as well. But think of it like an enterprise software-based component of the smart water reader kind of enterprise solution that we're trying to move to as today. Next slide. Continuing on, a tool like applicant tracking onboarding, we would think that this would be part of our human kind of resources information system component of our new ERP. We want to make sure that it's the best available solution, and not all ERP providers have a really robust tool. So if you see that we need to include this in a separate software, this would be basically a better way for potential job applicants to be able to centralize and standardize and digitize the application process that then gets brought into the city's employee management tool. So when they do get converted into an FTE or part-time employee, we can onboard them, collect all their documents in the digital solution, and also keep that recordation, and then kind of migrate their account over towards our payroll, our leave tracking, a lot of those human resource functions. So it's kind of like a left to right full solution for kind of new applicants becoming full-time employees. Parks and Recreation software enhancements, they've addressed some need to kind of improve certain aspects of their kind of a registration type tool for Parks and Recreation events called Civic Rec. This just allows them to address certain project areas to further enhance that product. Electronic content management is kind of a strategy and a system. We're going to be obviously moving over to City Hall and then to reduce the paper trail and digitize a lot of the city, if you think of it, scanning documents, a lot of scanning, as well as we move to these more online or let's say digital type workflows. This would be a way to capture those digital documents, PDF files, you name it, and then store it in kind of like a cloud-based storage solution for the city for anytime recall. You kind of think of it like a library type system. You can go into that tool and be able to find your document and recall it at any time. Same thing when I talked about applicant tracking, it also applies for budget software. Not a lot of ERPs have robust budget kind of dynamic software tools that also provide not just a dynamic tool for staff to collaborate and develop budgets, but also to make it transparent and available to the citizens and kind of unique dashboards. You're looking at an image right there. That would be something that might be displayed internally or externally. It just provides us with a better tool that gives us live information for both internal and external reporting. Next slide. Then finally, kind of like the same mindset as the budgeting tool, a manager dashboard reporting solution this essentially is in FY25. Once we have all of these point solutions in place, and we're creating data and collecting that data into like a kind of a centralized cloud storage tool, this essentially allows you to pull that information out into a readable dashboard, so you can have dissimilar information from two separate systems pulled together to give you a metric or give you an accurate read of how your program or department is doing in terms of whatever you're collecting, whether it be financially related, whether it be some sort of output, you name it. So this would be kind of the also addressing the city's need to increase performance kind of based reporting, management, decision making in the city as well. So I know that's an internal management tool that we would want just to be able to elevate people's understanding of what's happening in their departments with a more instantaneous tool that gets their information on a daily basis. And next slide, I think it's over to Don, who will be briefing the hardware.
Thanks, Chris. And before Don gets started, I just want to reiterate that we did have an IT master plan that was developed for the city. We shared that with the governing body. We essentially took from that kind of what the recommendations were, and they had it broken down on a spreadsheet for by year and what assets, and that's essentially what we're utilizing. So we're sticking to an actual professional consultant IT strategic master plan roadmap. So thanks.
Great.
Planning Commission. With the hardware, it's really very simple. We're looking at refreshing hardware every 5 years to keep it up to date and the warranties on them. The first one is purchasing 25 new workstation/laptops. We're going to be doing that per year, every year, so we can rotate out the old stuff and keep everything pretty fresh for everyone. The second item is the UPS, which is a 2-rack system we have here at City Hall. We will be moving that over to the new City Hall. The battery replacements are earmarked for this year, and we'll be doing that this year and then every 5 years for that. The next one is the UPS over at PD that will be replaced in 27. We just did that last year. And then we're looking at replacing physical servers as the ones that we need to and we can't put as virtual servers. We'll start replacing those in FY27. All right, for the infrastructure, this is the big one. We'll be looking at replacing all the switches. They are end of life every 5 years. We've already started with the new City Hall. We're putting all new switches in there. So we moved that up a little bit this year. And same with one of the core servers, core switches. We're replacing that this year. So next year we'll replace the core server at PD. So we have 2 core servers, one here and one at PD, for us to have traffic move back and forth for backing up data and for accessibility through the dark fiber. We'll also be looking at replacing all the wireless access points throughout the city. And again, we've started this year with the new City Hall, putting all new WAPs there, but then we'll need in 25 to replace all the other ones as they've come into block. The next item is the Vmware upgrade and server refresh. We're looking at, for us to do a better system, we had to split this in half, and we're doing this year, we're doing the one at City Hall, and taking all the old hardware and putting it down at PD for 1 year, and then the next year, here in FY23, we're going to put the new system in there. That way we have a constant, then we'll have a good backup between the 2 systems, so if one side goes down, the other side will be up. With that, every 5 years of upgrading that system. Cip trunking is what we're going to be looking at for this coming year. Right now, we're all on still copper lines over at PD. If PD does go down, our phone system goes down. With this coming up, the Cip trunking will place hardware at City Hall and at PD. If one goes down, it'll take all the others. So it'll be a total VoIP system, IP system through that with now. Number 6, firewall upgrades. like with everything else, we'll be upgrading our firewalls every 5 years, several at a time. And then the next one is new community development building. We're earmarking money for needs for that building for switches and equipment like that to connect them to the network. All right, security. So right now, we don't have cloud-based backups. That's earmarked for this next year. We'll be getting that, and we'll start having the backups on-site and off-site. We do cyber security testing, pen testing. In the next 5 years, we'll do it this next year's plan, and then in FY26. Also for this next year, we're going to look at an MDM solution, which is mobile device management solution for mobile phones. We use mainly iPhones, and if someone leaves and we don't have that information, password information, that iPhone is pretty much dead to us because we can't get into it and Apple won't let us. With a mobile device management solution, we'll be able to have control over that phone, so if that does happen, we can get into it, we can repurpose it. It'll also work with all our iPads and our tablets that we have, and we've started introducing those more this past year into the system, so we have a better control over those with that. Looking at next year, we're also looking at a disaster recovery plan. We do not actually have one for the IT disaster recovery. We do have the other plans, but this one we don't, so we're gonna create this plan, and then what follows for the next few years is the equipment, if we need to get equipment for that to keep that plan going properly. You can take out the SIP trunking, somehow I got that in that one too, but that one doesn't need to be back. That's it.
All right, now we'll be moving on to facilities, which will mainly be Calvin, and I'll brief some slides at the end. Calvin.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Calvin Model, the Director of Community Development. The first project is the Rugby storage yard improvements. The city has a storage yard off of West Rugby Road where we use for storage of spoils and backfill materials. This yard has been an issue because it's on DEQ's radar. It's a publicly owned facility, and therefore it needs special controls, and we've been using silk fence to sort of limp by without DEQ really coming down on us, but we have agreed in our long-term plan with DEQ to put in permanent erosion and sediment controls, siltation controls at the site. In the process of studying how to do that, there were other improvements that we need to make. The site is really poorly lit. The guys often use truck headlights at night to try to figure out what they're doing. As you can see, the site is not paved.
Right.
So when it rains, we bury loaders, we bury trucks that all get stuck in the mud, and it makes it almost impossible to execute operations. We often have to rent track machines just to load up spoils for haul off. And additionally, we've noticed that our spoils materials, because they are weighed for disposal, when they're saturated, cost us a lot more to get rid of them because they're sitting out in the open. And our fill materials, when they're saturated and we use them, they tend to settle more. So we wind up spending a lot more time going back and fixing repairs that settle, and we also pay a lot more to have our spoils removed. So a part of our recommendation for the storage yard is to include a roof over the structure. So there's quite a few improvements wrapped into this, and initially we had scoped this at a much smaller price tag, but as time's gone on and the scope of the project has grown, it's up to a $640,000 project cost, but these are long-term improvements, will help with both functionality and the cost of maintenance of the site. The facilities, a police station. This is a slide that includes multiple small projects lumped into one police station. We have leak repairs project that was formerly known as roof repairs. A recent leaks survey of the building conducted by a third party determined that the leak was not coming from the roof membrane, but the leaks were more associated with flashing, water infiltrating in through the walls. When they were spraying down the roof, no water was coming in. As soon as they moved up to the parapet walls and the exterior walls, water started coming in a visible manner. So we're waiting on that final report to put forth recommendations, but we're keeping $150,000 in as a placeholder. We do know that one portion of those leak repairs is going to be replacement and reflashing of the top parapet wall where there's precast concrete. In line with our suspicions, it's not per the detail in the plan, and it's clear that water's been infiltrating through that parapet wall for some time. The electrical equipment replacement is directly correlated to the leak repair project. As you can see in some of these photos, there's a great amount of water that's been leaking down the walls. We've already replaced a small transfer switch, and recently this year we had I believe it was that disconnect in the left-hand picture on the right that actually blew up. So we've already replaced some of this electrical equipment, but again, it continues to be saturated with water during major rain events. So we would like to get rid of all that equipment. There is no way to properly restore wet electrical equipment in accordance with the code, so it all needs to go once we get these leaks under control. The PD flooring, there's either groundwater infiltrating up through the floor or window leaks that have led to a great deal of tiles popping off on the ground floor of the PD. We're estimating that work at around $48,000. Building paint and caulk, again, I believe that this report we see associated with the leak repairs, the first item, is also going to point out that some of the caulk around the casement windows is starting to crack and peel, allowing additional conduits for water to enter the building. So $24,000 for building paint and caulk. And then precast stone repair, I believe there's slides after this, correct, showing
the
additional
pictures, yeah.
images.
Yep.
There was a lot of precast stone put in with the building, and I'm not exactly sure why, but a lot of it has become really ugly. Some of the reinforcement steel is close to the surface, and you can see rust spots. But in general, we're seeing a lot of cracking and damage to the original precast stone. We're estimating that precast stone repair replacement at $48,000. Altogether, $378,000 in repair costs to the PD in '23, $450,000 over 5 years. Here's some images of some of the water infiltration. You see that black stain on the walls behind some of the piping. Here is some of the precast stone that's a mixture of cast-in-place stone and precast stone. You can see how it's become damaged. You can see the rust spots forming around the handrails, and in some places, rust spots in the middle of the precast stone. Here's an example of the flooring, where the flooring is clearly has signs of moisture and the tiles popping up. This next project is the same basic layout. Facilities at the fire station. The slide is laid out a little differently. There was 4 more projects, so we put the projects on a second slide. I'll capture the highlights of this slide, and we'll move on to the itemized projects. Altogether, project cost for FY23 is $55.3 thousand, $629,000 over 5 years. The projects include interior painting. We are going to attempt to move interior painting to an operational line where we do a substantial amount of painting each year, but stay below the $5,000 CIP threshold, so that regular painting of these facilities doesn't lead to massive projects like this. But we need to play catch-up at the fire station, especially get the entire interior painted. It's a cost of $42,000 in '23. The dumpster enclosure is not only aged and weathered, but it's to the point that the pressure-treated wood is falling apart. They've lost some soil on the backside, so one of the posts is actually exposed. It's no longer in good structural shape. They had said repair. I'm actually recommending it's probably more cost-effective just to replace the entire structure. That again is in FY23 for $7,800. Digital LED sign installation. Overall, I think as a city, we're trying to launch an initiative here to get some LED informational signage across the city in a more permanent fashion than the variable message boards that we use, but especially the fire department needs a way to inform the public of events, things that they're hosting at the fire station. So this is a $53,000 estimate for FY '24. Bay fans, there is a heating and cooling system in the bays, but the cooling system is not really capable of cooling, and we probably wouldn't want to try to maintain the bays at 72 degrees or anything like that, but they do have very nice large bay fans that create extra airflow to make the bays more comfortable in the summertime. That's at a cost of $12,000 in FY '24. The windows at the fire department, we tried 3 years ago to do a massive overhaul of those windows, paid a third party to come out and replace all of the hardware, make minor corrections that could be made, but these are aluminum framed windows, casement windows in a masonry building, and they don't close properly, they don't function properly, so all of the issues we've had with HVAC maintenance are just exacerbated by the fact that these windows have cracks and gaps in them that fight us all year long, whether it's hot or cold outside. And they're really not functional. You know, you fight like crazy just to get one open, even after the repairs were made. So, complete window replacement recommended throughout the building in FY '25 for a cost right under $40,000. The kitchen remodel is a much more substantial project, but also with good purpose. As we entered into this COVID pandemic, it was noted by the fire department especially, they live in the same building essentially. They're there, people are there, treating it as a living space 24 hours a day, and they have one kitchen, and for an entire group of firefighters to try to prep meals, they're right on top of each other in a very crowded kitchen. They also have issues where they're using 3 residential refrigerators in a pantry area, and that's generating so much excess heat in that little pantry area and taking up so much space that it's actually affecting the way the AC system works, because it's sucking a lot of hot air straight up into the return plenum. So we're looking for better solutions with the kitchen layout that will allow the firefighters and the paramedics to keep their distance, safely prepare food when we are social distancing, and also try to solve some of these issues with space and heat. An exhaust removal system in FY '26, that is another key project. They have an exhaust removal system that has not functioned since I can remember. And of course, you know, you're firing up large diesel apparatus inside of the bays. It's not a healthy condition. We've had numerous contractors come and try to get the CO sensors to work and actuate the existing system like it's supposed to. Nobody has recommended that we actually venture into repair. They think we just need to replace the whole system. So this is a very important safety issue. Again, FY '26, $156,000. Another flooring replacement project. This one's at the fire station. The flooring there, especially, we had a leak in a water heater that really took out a substantial area of flooring, but the flooring is all primarily original to the building, unless it's patchwork that firefighters have done themselves. So this is a comprehensive flooring replacement throughout the building in FY '27 for $53,000. The generator as well, critical piece of equipment. If the generator goes down, there's not any UPS that's going to keep the data equipment powered in that building, the lights and things, for more than a couple hours. So the generator is a crucial piece of equipment. We can't have our firefighters without their data equipment to alert them of emergencies. We can't have them running around in a dark building because we've lost power. The generator is original to the building and it needs to be replaced. So that's in FY '27 for $90,000. And this heat pump replacement in FY '27 is a small split unit that serves an area away from the bays that stores like their oxygen or their SCBA apparatus recharging equipment, their gear washing equipment, all of those storage spaces on the far end of the building. That heat pump serves them. and we have had nothing but repairs. We're currently undergoing the second repair of this winter on that piece of equipment, so we will try to keep it running until 27, but this would represent an entire replacement of that split system, $14,000 in FY '27. Facilities, the building automation system, this has sort of been an ongoing project. We've been trying to get rid of proprietary software that controls HVAC systems in our buildings. That's been a real focus of the facilities manager since he came on board, getting away from proprietary software. When we have the new city hall up, would be the final step in this project, so the facilities manager can see what's going on at all buildings from a single laptop as long as he's logged into the network. This system can tie into not only HVAC but also security controls and any intelligent lighting systems, so that those things can be monitored remotely as well, all from one comprehensive system. The total project cost is $125,000, and we're scheduling it at FY '25 after the occupation of the new city hall building. Public parking lots. This deals with both the surfacing of the lots and the lighting of the lots. We have a rough estimate based on our internal city engineers' estimates of paving costs. We've tried to do the resurfacing in an average of $100,000 a year. This is comprehensive to all city-owned facilities, so your park, Signal Hill Park, Blooms Park, we'll look at is that pavement there ages, but as on top of that, your community center, your PD, your fire department, city hall, Public Works. Fortunately, City Hall and Public Works, we're trying to replace those facilities as we speak, so those are not priorities right now. And the LED lighting upgrades, we've actually made good progress towards upgrading a lot of the parking lot lighting at the police station. We're going to try to finish up the fire station this year as well, but upgrading the community center is a very large project, and that's $45,000. Total cost for all of this resurfacing, again, trying to stick to $100,000 a year in lot resurfacing activities, is $452,000 over 5 years. And I know the timeline is only going out to 27, but understandably, parking lot resurfacing will not end in 27. This will be beyond this CMP. Right now, this is based on city engineers' estimates, what we think a decent plan of resurfacing looks like. For the actual resurfacing operations, Costello Park, there's some areas that are in really bad shape, and we don't want to wind up losing any base. That's a relatively new parking lot. We want to try to get that resurfaced and stop water infiltration while we can. There's also some sidewalks around that facility that are dire need of repair. And then moving on to the primary lot of the community center, Costello Park. As far as the parking lot upgrades, again, police and fire, we hope to have those completed in FY '22, and then we'll move on to the community center in FY '24. And Public Works, we had it in there, but if we're in a new facility, we'll have to reevaluate when we move.
Excellent. Thank you, Calvin. And in terms of the previous slide, for the fire station parking lot, that's being handled under the ARPA. Funding, so their facility qualified for ARPA funding for improvements because they're technically a medical facility as well. So we're dealing. We didn't leave the fire department out of this project in terms of repairs and resurfacing. For this project, New City Hall, New Community Development, this will stick around probably for the next few years on the slide deck, and hopefully we'll be done with it. But what this entails is two major projects. Number one, the City Hall, as you can see across the street, that's currently under construction, should be done this summer, and we'll move over to New City Hall and tear down this building in order, as a reminder, in order for us to be able to pay for that, we're essentially we entered into a lease purchase agreement where we pay annual lease payments for about 30 years. When we're done making those payments, then we take full ownership of the building. We have quasi ownership until that time, so we're still able to really run things until then, but you take full ownership once you finish making your payments. And we're using the proceeds from the development, just the residential portion of the downtown. We're not dependent on the commercial component, but just the residential portions. to actually pay those annual fees. Those begin in FY24, about $500,000 in lease payments that year, goes up to $1 million in '25, and then up to $1.5 million by FY26, and it stays like that for the remainder of the loan term. So we pushed it back a few years, the start of the lease purchase payments, to make sure that we give enough time for the residential components of Phase 3 to take off. And they're going to be starting construction here soon. I think they just got their permits approved last week to begin building the actual condo building. So we need those in place to start making those payments. The second project, and again, this building and the current Public Works building were the two oldest buildings in the city from a public facility standpoint. We've come up with a solution for City Hall to address that without impacting current taxpayers. And we're looking to do the same thing in terms of the Public Works building and really the overall community development department. So finding a building solution where Calvin and his whole team could finally be together and have a newer facility. We don't have the funds, the debt capacity to build a brand new building, but we want to acquire an existing industrial facility that should meet the needs of our community development Public Works. Ideally, that was constructed in the 2000s, so kind of the same timeline as most of when our facilities from schools and the city were built, so we can kind of forecast all those renovations we're going to have to do in the 2030s and 40s kind of together, but it will be a cheaper solution to buy an existing facility, and ideally we want to get a facility that also could help out our city schools with some of their facility requirements that you'll be seeing later in this project. So we have some dollars earmarked for that, starting in FY24 from the general fund, using the proffer money from the downtown development, again, not to impact our taxpayers, and then also from the water and sewer fund and stormwater fund, because this building will also house them. So for the water and sewer fund, we're going to want to rely on the tap fees from this development to pay for that as well. And then we've also set aside some money for this from the ARPA fund, because we think there's going to be some educational components to it in terms of supporting our schools with some of their facility needs as well. So those are the two main projects. These are large-scale facilities, are always going to be the biggest driver of your CIP. If you look at the CIPs in the 2000s, they were astronomical. It's because we were doing a bunch of buildings at that time. And so being able to knock these two out with an affordable strategy would be remarkable to help out our taxpayers and not have to deal with these facility requirements. The next project is the security system replacement and upgrade project. This was approved via the governing body via contract back in September, so there's already contracted work, but again, here more for informational purposes since it's scheduled out for the next few years. But the payments for this will have begun in FY22, and we make annual payments of $305,000 each year for the next 3 years, so 22, 23, and 24. But the majority of the work should get done by 2022, but we entered into a finance agreement to be able to pay for it across those 3 years and not impact our current FY22 budget. So what this project entails is whenever you come in, if you guys use your ID cards to swipe in, right, that's a security system we have. The vendor who is doing that was coming back with a lot of higher prices, let's put it that way, and all these were getting very old. It was time to replace them anyways across our facilities. The fire station didn't even have any. They didn't even have any card reader right now access. Everything was a combination, so it was very old. Our new city hall needed those, so we're replacing all of them across the city with a more modern solution. We're installing security cameras. Most of our facilities don't have any security cameras, and the ones at the police station we're getting older. We have to upgrade them with new security cameras, safe alarm systems for our treasurer, panic buttons for our employees who are dealing with customers with all the active shooter incidences that are occurring across the country. We want to equip our staff with the ability to notify police immediately. So that's what this project entails. And again, it's already been approved, but we keep presenting it for appropriations and budget planning reasons. And the project is not done yet, so I want to keep this all on your radar. And next we'll move to our fleet replacement program, so I will turn it over back to Chris.
All right, we'll start with the kind of the 10-year plan, because this is a part of a much broader plan and 10-year ongoing strategy for the city. So just to kind of quickly review, this was the FY21 phase decision to move to an enterprise lease model for the city in terms of replacement vehicles. that we really only really started due to kind of delaying things for the COVID kind of pause, and FY22 was the first year that we really started replacing the bulk majority of our vehicles, which we're doing right now as a city. So this is just kind of the continued plan to execute. I just wanted to take a few caveats. You know, obviously people have brought up the kind of understanding that, you know, logistics and supply chains have been kind of co-bottled here. You know, we still have a really solid agreement with Enterprise to find and procure government rate vehicles, so we haven't really seen any increase in pricing from the original forecast, but there has been some slight uptick in the kind of public safety upfitting material costs. So all of those components that go into are mostly police and fire rescue vehicles. So we did see a little bit of that, but that's on the upfit side, not necessarily something that is with Enterprise, but we do bake that material component into the lease price. But also of note that just the value of used vehicles is also going up. So the net kind of fallout is kind of still a break even in terms of the offsetting cost there, just because the value of the equity of our current vehicles that we're selling back to Enterprise is also just going up because used vehicles are just more valuable because of, you know, just the lack of brand new vehicles and the cost of them going up. So we still compared it to the old model that we had prior to the Enterprise program, and we're still about a net savings of just over $900,000. So next slide. So this is just kind of a takeaway to show the cost in that year of which we're procuring the vehicles. So this doesn't show the kind of accrued aggregate cost year over year for all the vehicles we currently have on lease. But it's a good idea to take away in terms of what departments and how much those departments are going to be providing in terms of cost per vehicles for that FY for the next 5 years. So you can see the differentiation, the 1.8 in this versus the total, which is 2.6 over that same 5-year period. It's worth noting just quickly into FY24, there's a fire rescue battalion chief vehicle. It's kind of like a backup vehicle. They're going to be kind of highly specializing it for multiple uses. But that is something that we are building into our enterprise model, but it's also being tracked as a standalone expenditure. So if that was going to be the case, we would utilize enterprise just to procure the vehicle for us, but we would do a one-time expenditure, so it would actually come out of this model. Next slide.
And before we leave the slide, just note, FY27, we did order a lot of vehicles this year, or we're in the process of, so that's kind of the replacement of the majority of those vehicles as well. So we start the cycle all over again, but that way we kind of use Enterprise's recommended life cycle for making sure we maximize our return value, our equity when we sell the used vehicles to help reduce the cost going forward.
Okay.
And then, yeah, that's correct. Everything is built into a 5-year replacement model. So 22, 27 would be the first year that we would turn over the newer enterprise fleet. This is just to capture the FY23 total cost in 5 years. So we can go in the next slide. We have the breakdown in detail. So this year we're only have police vehicles in the rotation. So you can just see in the breakdown, they're going to be primarily replacing old inventory. But there is a need for a new fleet asset based off of the hiring of the special victims detectives in the police department, in which they'll need their own separate 24/7 vehicle to support that position. So that was an additional vehicle from the original model. So it was just captured here and was showing, annotating that it wasn't in the original. It was like a 78 model fleet that we had for the white fleet. Now that brings it up to 79. Next slide. So this is just kind of the breakdown and showing the proposed platforms that we're going to be doing for each. We use Tahoes just because it represents the most conservative type vehicle in terms of size and expense. So, talking with Chief Lugo, there is going to be some variation in possibly some different platforms. It just depends on what vehicles are out there and what the specific need is. But it's always good to plan for the most conservative case and then flex to that. So, these could be like Explorer Interceptors. They could be smaller sedan type models. It just depends. Next slide.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
So moving on to the Registrar, no changes from her slide last year, but if you have any follow-up questions, please do email us and we can go follow up with Patricia for anything here. But this is simply no change to this, but replacing all of our voting equipment in FY24 to make sure that they're up to date. Now we'll be transferring over to our city schools. Mr. Neff, are you on? Eric, can you hear us? Yeah, he's on. He's unmuted, so I think, do you do a mic check? Sure. Eric Neff, can you hear us? We will get back to him when we give him a call, see what's going on. I will, we'll jump down to transportation. We'll come back to schools when we get Mr. Neff back online. All right, so Cal?
Good evening again. The first project under transportation is really a series of culvert replacement projects. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the Saltshed Drive culvert and what happened there. We have many of these corrugated metal culverts throughout the city that were installed around the same time frame. As you can see from the images, they're not too dissimilar from the condition that Mosby was in, with a lot of degradation of the corrugated material below the water line. Russia branch culverts, we're specifically referring to the twin culverts that go underneath the Manassas Drive. Manassas Drive is around 17,000 vehicles a day pre-COVID. It's a major roadway for this part of Manassas Park in Prince William County. We are currently exploring options to line those culverts, but the estimate right now that we're running with is $2.5 million in FY23. Manassas Drive at Public Works, that is another twin culvert set that runs under Manassas Drive. Slightly lower vehicle count over there, but does run under Manassas Drive nonetheless. We call them the Manassas Drive at Public Works because it's literally abuts the property there. It's closest to the Public Works building. That's the best reference we can give. We're estimating that as a $390,000 project because we're not looking at this point to do any major relining. We think we can do that with just a bottom repair. So if we repair the bottom condition, it should suffice. In Kirby Street, that is another one that we think is a prime candidate for a bottom condition repair. So we're looking at $150,000. And we would use stormwater RUMS funds for that because this is primarily a stormwater pipe repair. Total cost for these projects, $2.7 million in FY23 and $3.05 million over 5 years. The next project is an ongoing series of projects that we carry in the capital improvements plan on an annual basis. Street improvements, resealing is a line that you'll find in the CIP. We try to increase the amount to that line every year. This year we're going to be very fortunate in FY23 to have some grantor's tax that's not being utilized by other projects to increase our street surfacing, street improvements and resealing line to $426,000. It's historically for the past several years run around $250,000, so this is a drastic increase in what we'll be able to spend on resurfacing. Additional streets projects, this one again has gone up annually by 5% for several years. It would be $94,000 in FY23. Additional streets projects, we tend to aim more at concrete replacement, curb and gutter replacement. But we have used it in the past if we can't cover a necessary resurfacing operation with what's in addition with what's in street improvements and resealing. We have used this additional streets projects line to supplement that. But we do first and foremost try to target concrete repairs with this beyond what we carry for just contract services in the streets operations budget. So I think major vendor concrete repairs all over the city. And then another one that's not necessarily annual and ongoing, but is a regular occurrence. There is a section of Manassas Drive from the western city limits to Mathis Avenue that carries a designation as a primary route with VDOT. As such, with the primary route designation, it qualifies for primary extension paving money. And we have had that section of Manassas Drive resurfaced under this grant before. We have an application in to do it in '23. So even though we wouldn't identify that section of Manassas Drive as absolutely the worst, if they're gonna give us $1 million to resurface it, there's been plenty of repairs and water breaks and Columbia gas shutoffs that have happened that make it a decent candidate for some resurfacing. So every 5 years, Steve, we have an opportunity to apply for this grant, so it is somewhat ongoing. Total cost for all of these resurfacing and maintenance operations, $1.5 million in FY '23, $3.7 million over 5 years. The signage project slide includes the no parking sign installations, which I think most of you are familiar with. We had done some research, some calculations on what we're spending painting yellow curb. We had some complaints from the PD about not being able to enforce some of the faded yellow curb and issues they were having in court without no parking signs. Turns out that it's actually cheaper to install no parking signs than to continually brighten up yellow paint on the curb. And that's further complicated by the fact that we are now a very crowded city with lots of parking issues, and if you want to spray paint yellow curb, you have to clear a pretty large area because after spray is a real issue, where you don't have to do that for sign installations and maintenance. So we plan into the CIP $16,000 in FY '23, $83,000 over 5 years to install no parking signs throughout the city. The no commercial vehicle sign installations project is based on a zoning text amendment and a code amendment that took place this past year to ban certain types of commercial vehicles and trailers from the public streets. Unfortunately, we have to put signage up so that those rules can, so that people can be ticketed, violators can be ticketed, and it can be enforced. We're carrying an estimate of $250,000. We have not gotten back RFP results on that. Hopefully it'll come in lower, but that's a safe bet, and that is scheduled for FY '23. And then wayfinding and entrance signage. When we say entrance signage, think wherever you're entering the city or entering into a specific area of the city, a welcoming city sign that lets you know where you are, and then wayfinding signage pointing people to city facilities, key points of interest in the city. $200,000 in FY '23, $400,000 over 2 years. Total cost for it is $65,000. In FY '23, $732,000 over 5 years for all of these signage projects.
Actually, can you go back? So the last one, the wayfinding entrance signage, so that's going to be directly in line with, we have a master plan we're working on right now, or not a master plan, but a complete streets analysis right now that Steve and Calvin are working on with some contractors to look at our downtown in terms of pedestrian safety, mobility, directing residents and customers to the downtown. Manassas Park entrance signage on Route 28, secured signage as well, so that cars aren't destroying it every few years, I think, which is what happened to the previous welcome sign that we used to have there. So we have a comprehensive plan. This would also include wayfinding signage for businesses. So if you've seen VDOT exits right off of highways or even along Route 7, which is a very similar route to Route 28, you have exit signs for Wegmans, for Theater XYZ. We want to have that for our key businesses as well, to direct people off of 28. That's one of the kind of requirements that these businesses who've been engaging with us really want, is they like the traffic counts on 28, and they want to be able to put some signage letting people know that their business is just 1 mile ahead over here this way. So that's what that project entails. It's pretty comprehensive, so we hope that the analysis that Steve and Calvin and the consultants are doing right now will kind of guide what we should be doing there.
Okay, updating the traffic signals. We have every intersection in the city scheduled out for major traffic signal renovations. This includes replacement of the heads and back plates, inspection of the masts and mast arms, any replacement of bolts, mast arms where necessary, and then again, some of the internal equipment, detection equipment, our detection equipment. Some of it is new. We only have one intersection in the city where we use actual loop detection. Everywhere else we use camera detection. The primary purpose of that is because we're always excavating and we're a developing, growing city, so when you're constantly digging up loops, it's a real menace. If you have camera detection, it solves that problem at least. But we only have one intersection in the city with loop detection. Our video detection is very antiquated on all but 3 of our intersections, and we're actually starting to have troubles finding repair equipment for that. We also have an issue where some of our malfunction management units, referred to as MMU, that actually sends the signal into flash whenever their conflicting movements are called for. It's a hardwired board, so that if the traffic controller messes up and sends conflicting movements heading towards each other, the signal automatically goes into flash. Those units are aging, and we're having troubles finding replacement cards. I think we bought the last 2 on eBay. It's getting that bad. So this project would cover all of those major necessary repairs and upgrades to the signals. $31,000 in FY23. We're going to try to focus that project on Park Center Court, as there's going to be new timings, and we've had to make some repairs and improvements to that to get this construction underway. $167,000 over 5 years for the remainder of the signals. Saltshed Bmp Replacement. We have noticed a ton of water infiltration. Of the current Saltshed Bmp, which captures all the salt through a drainage system, all the salt-laden runoff into a box similar to this, it's a vacuum system. So it's more like a septic tank. When it fills up, you have to have that pumped out and hauled off. When you have water infiltration, you start doing that more and more and more often. And additionally, we don't have real good confidence that it's doing what it's supposed to do, because if water leaks in, water leaks out. So the Saltshed Bmp needs to be replaced. That's at a cost of $100,000 in FY23. Concrete intersection at Owens. We have done a lot of resurfacing at the intersection of Owens and Euclid. There's quite a few businesses on Owens Drive that have very large tractor-trailer trucks, loaded dump trucks, things of that nature. Where those vehicles stop in that intersection, the pavement buckles and piles. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen that type of thing before, but we have tried to resurface it. We've gone full depth by using public works staff to cut out, do full depth pavement repair, and it constantly reoccurs. One solution for sure that will stand up to that type of weight is concrete. Unfortunately, it's very expensive to install a concrete intersection, but if you look at Route 28, the intersection of 28 and Manassas Drive, that intersection was built in the 90s. And minor offsetting in the sections, but you won't notice any major cracks or potholes or anything. So it's really a very long-term, repair replacement project. So although the price tag seems high, you probably make your money in the end after 20, 30 years of constant repairs. Again, that's FY24 for $500,000. Manassas Park Trails Connectivity. This is an initiative that I want to say the former Public Parks and Rec Director started many years ago with an entire trails plan. We were approached by COG, Prince William County, and the City of Manassas 2 years ago about some available grant money on the federal level that COG was administering for our region. And this is a follow-up to that. At that time, we didn't have a trails plan in our comprehensive plan. We didn't have a trails plan that had been modified to connect with Prince William, Manassas, Fairfax County, their existing trail systems. What this would do is try to interconnect trails with Manassas, with Prince William County, make the longest possible trail routes we can by interconnecting trails through the city of Manassas Park to those jurisdictions. And hopefully opening up many, many, many grant opportunities, because there are substantial grant opportunities for bicycle trails and pedestrian trails, especially when you're putting together the type of mileage that we're talking about putting together. So our neighbors are very excited that we're getting on board with this. It's going to open up a lot of grant funding opportunity. And this will also be a great way to really kick off a bicycle plan for the city, a way to bring bicyclists and pedestrians to our new developing downtown to make us truly multimodal. So we're very excited about this initiative. $60,000 in FY23, primarily for a planning study, $1.06 million over 5 years. Mass Transportation Master Plan. This is a very, Manassas did one of these a few years back, and I spoke with Chloe DeLome over there when she was doing it. I actually got to sit down and interview with their consultant. It's a very nice process. You know, you consider yourselves, what your focuses are, what your neighbors' focuses are, what regional transportation focuses are, and you take a comprehensive look at your transportation system and put together a long-term transportation master plan. Such a plan can then be referenced as like an appendix in your comprehensive plan, or can serve as a separate document to guide the transportation program manager and city manager on future decisions. But it's a very worthwhile process to go through, provides real guidance so that we're not just coming up with projects at CIP time. We have a professionally developed plan that we can act on. Again, the planning costs $25,000 in FY23, $100,000 over 5 years for the full development of the plan. Emergency preparedness projects. These, we did a comprehensive transportation chapter, comprehensive plan transportation chapter amendment not too long ago. And in that, there were some illustrations of some emergency connections, I believe they're referred to in the comprehensive plan. As we learned with Mosby culvert failure, we have a couple of subdivisions over there, Mosby 1 and Mosby 2, that are one way in, one way out. And their one way in, one way out is a culvert under a creek. We need to start thinking what we would do in situations like we had, where all of a sudden we have hundreds and hundreds of residents with no way to get down in and out of a subdivision, no way for emergency services to get to them. So a city evacuation plan is part of that picture. What would we do if there was a major emergency of, you know, a chlorine tanker on the tracks? How are we going to get everybody out of the city? How are we going to get people out of that vicinity? What do we do if there's a major flood that washes out several culverts in the city, blocking the roads for hundreds and hundreds of residents? So some of those illustrations are in the comp plan, but we want to take a comprehensive look at what would we have to do if there was a catastrophic emergency and we had to evacuate the entire city. And then emergency connections would spur from that city evacuation plan, pointing to high-risk areas where we actually need emergency connections put in place. We have rough estimates, what staff believes were good options. They were vetted by an engineer, but this would take a comprehensive look at what we need to do to meet our emergency transportation needs. Total cost is $0 in FY23, $1.47 million over 5 years, because that includes anticipated construction costs for some of these emergency connections. Mathis Avenue extension to Old Centerville Road. This was something else that was included in the last amendment to the transportation chapter, the comprehensive plan. I think most people are familiar with the game that we play every morning, where people come up Mathis Avenue and they don't want to get on 28 because they see the crowd, so they cut through Scott Drive to get to Old Centerville Road. We have resurfaced Scott Drive numerous times. The residents hate it. We get probably more resident speeding complaints on Scott Drive than any other section of the city because everybody's always in a hurry during rush hour and they use it as like a speedway. And we've had speed humps out there, but those become problematic with plowing activities. It's really a no-win. This would extend Mathis Avenue. The proposed alignment in the comp plan is behind the shopping center, but this would extend Mathis Avenue out to Old Centerville Road, keep those people from using our residential side streets as a major thoroughfare, help the congestion on 28 by giving those people a fast route to get to where they want to go. So a sort of alternative bypass, a minor bypass of Route 28. Altogether, this is going to be a very expensive project. No spending in '23, but $500,000 over 5 years, and that's really just planning and preliminary design money. And then because of the potential property of the acquisitions that would be involved to develop that roadway, $15.5 million, 25 through 29. Route 28 corridor improvements. This was a project that we put in for smart scale funding. FY or calendar year 20, we submitted the application. We did not score well. We scored pretty low. This is innovative intersections, R cuts, L cuts, median U-turns, creative solutions to keep side street turning movements from triggering the various signals along Route 28 unnecessarily. So you're really restricting side street traffic coming onto 28, the way they come onto 28 to leave more signal, open signal time for the northern movement. It's a major safety project, is what we learned from the STARS study that VDOT conducted. You have a lot of accidents on Route 28 when people are turning in and out of all these various shopping centers and driveway entrances. And these R-cut, L-cut, and median U-turn intersections help to cure some of that, but they do improve travel time down the corridor. We're looking to add aspects to the project that will help it score higher in smart scale. Anything that involves multimodal transportation, bus depot, park and ride lots, things like that. Any of those things improve the way this scores in smart scale, but we're going to continue to pursue funding for this project. We know that this is far out. Hopefully within 5 years we can get some preliminary design money in the amount of $3.15 million, but this is a $58 million project at current estimates. Counter Drive Extension West. This project will hopefully be out to bid in March. We have one more utility that says they need another 2 to 4 weeks. Beyond that, we'll be ready to issue construction RFP. This will reconnect. I understand that at one time a gravel road did actually connect Euclid Avenue to Route 28, but ever since the residential subdivision was built, that road has been blocked at the edge of the residential subdivision. This would fully pave, provide parking on both sides of Connor Drive through that area, and allow people a better access from Route 28 into our downtown and from our downtown to Route 28. Will also help to serve the businesses that are between Connor Drive and Manassas Drive, because if any of you have ever tried to go to the U-Haul or go to the gas station on the corner, you don't have a lot of choices. You either wind up making a U-turn somewhere down on 28, or you wind up driving all the way down to Liberia and coming back to it. So those businesses should benefit from this project, once, especially the members of the residents of this subdivision will have much better access to those businesses right there on the corner. But this project is $2.7 million in total, and $2.3 million in FY22 through 23, as we do anticipate will be completed with construction hopefully this fall. Counter Drive Extension South. This one is probably new to everyone here, but we have seen iterations of this when we were looking to relocate the parking garage, the BRE parking garage from the base tract. We had several developers come in with certain proposals. I believe one of those proposals that was shown to the Planning Commission and the governing body had a bridge or tunnel extending Connor Drive to the lot in front of the Elms. This is very similar. We're looking at either a bridge or a tunnel underneath of the railroad tracks that would then likely lead to a traffic circle, do away with the traffic signal at Railroad Drive and provide a more fluid traffic circle to solve all of those roads. Steve did a great job because it probably would be configured very similar to this illustration. But right now, when the railroad arms, which I think Norfolk Southern says there is no problem, but we all know there's a problem.
Yes.
When the railroad arms
Yes.
get stuck down,
Yep.
traffic backs up, and it can take 45 minutes for me to get here to my house in Blooms, because you gotta go to Liberia. Well, our emergency responders have to go through the same thing. So a second way to traverse the tracks that is not an at-grade crossing subject to railroad arms or, God forbid, some sort of major catastrophe on the tracks. If our emergency access vehicles had a bridge or a tunnel that they could go under or over the tracks, that would definitely improve our safety here in the city. So there's a lot of aspects to this project that are very positive, but again, this is a very pricey project. We're looking for $80,000 in FY '23 to do some planning level work, and then $2.08 million over 5 years, but that is not construction yet in 5 years. We're still in right-of-way acquisition and further preliminary design.
So with this one, remember we were working on the culverts here? There was a concern at one time that we were actually going to have to close down Manassas Drive in that area,
Wow.
which would have made our residents incredibly happy about their commute.
Extremely.
So this has been kind of something that's been on our radar. How do we tackle this issue? What if a train derails, or
Right.
what happens if we shut down Manassas Drive? It's a big pain, not just for our residents, but it's also a life safety issue when it comes to our fire and rescue and our police and their ability to quickly get to a large percentage of our residents that live east of the railroad tracks, and all of our public security facilities are west of that. So we want to make sure we're thinking about options, just as Calvin was talking about before with emergency preparedness plans. What's another option to get our residents and our public safety vehicles across the railroad tracks through our city? So this seemed like the best proposal because of the grade of the lot on the other side, the east side of the tracks there. It's already pretty low. And then because Phase 4 is planning on extending Connor Drive out a little bit further, we're already extending Connor Drive out to 28. So this is a logical option to evaluate in terms of planning. And this also provides other options if your commute in the morning on 28, sometimes it backs up on Manassas Drive all the way to the fire station, right?
Right.
I'm sure everyone's encountered that before. People are trying to cut over through Bloom's Quarry Road. They're cutting through. They're ignoring our school crossing guards. We're trying to get kids safely across that street. It's a big mess. This will provide, when you go on your map and see where it's red, this could be a green option and jump over here to get to Route 28 off of Connor Drive as well. So it should help with traffic flow for our residents, and when it does back up to the fire station. Of course, with the other projects we're proposing here to hopefully improve 28, this is just another component of that, and also a life safety project that we think is important.
Cool. Would this
Okay.
be a good moment for a break? Would this
Want
be
to take a
okay
break? Yeah,
for
that's up to you all.
a break?
Yes, that'd
5
be
minutes,
great.
10 minutes?
All right.
What would you like?
But I have some questions. Well, are we able
5-minute
to
break?
ask questions?
We'll take a 5-minute break. The time is 8:40.
You have some initial
Yeah, but I didn't know if I was supposed to say, hey.
We can have our questions when we come back from break. Is that okay?
We'll start
Well,
off.
yeah, I mean, they're just kind of like informational things
Sure.
for me. It's not any big deal, but I just kind of like to know what.
We'll just take our 5-minute break. We'll come back and we'll take
Super.
care of that.
That's great, thank you.
Sure.
Eric, can we do a mic check? Eric Neff, can you hear us?
Hey, Laszlo, can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Perfect.
I
Hello?
can't envision
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Let me go back
where
to the screen. We're taking a
Mathis,
5-minute break
when they're,
right
if
now.
they, I can see
We'll come
Mathis
back.
coming. onto Manassas Drive, but where's it gonna go
Adam,
to
can you hear us, Adam
extend?
Jones?
Where's it gonna come out?
You got your back of your shopping center?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Here's Mathis.
Can y'all hear me?
Here's the shopping center.
Okay.
Yeah, here's Manassas Drive, here's Mathis Avenue. Because there's sheets, it's got it identified. that's the shopping center, the Mega Mart, the Popeyes.
So they pulled out
That's not
and
working. You may want
relisted.
to call in.
So the next day we went and looked at the house.
Chief Lugo,
And the
mic
owner
check.
was there and we like hung out and we talked and she showed us around, told us some stories. A realtor told us like 8 other people looked at the house that day, but they took our offer.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
When did you move here?
2 years ago? Yeah.
Cool.
On your way back to your chair, go check out, get some. You're more than welcome to ask your
I
questions.
have 2 questions, and I'm going to try to keep everything in order, but I'm not going to be able to. That wasn't, yeah, that was it. My first question is on the Rugby Road project. Is that currently being done? Are we in FY '23 now, or?
No, we're in 22, so it's
So
starting
it's
now.
not,
Yeah, so the governing body last meeting approved the design engineering contract for that. So that's what's going to happen in 22, and then construction in 23.
because it sounds like it really needs to be done, plus it's a money saver for the city, so, okay, so it's not being done. And my other question is on the generator at the firehouse. Can that be done sooner? It sounds like it's a very important thing. Is what we have there now still got a lifetime, or, because this isn't until FY '27?
Yeah, it's still functioning, we're just trying to make sure that we're planning for reasonable replacement.
So if it died in FY '24, we have to wait until '27?
No.
No, because that's a major thing.
Other capital projects where we
Shift around.
Especially the FY19 was a debt spike year. We almost zeroed out capital.
Just have
Then
to
things break, and then we have to
readjust.
figure it out.
Super.
Yeah.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay. Eric?
Right.
Good evening. I'm Mary Manassas. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for the School Division, and I apologize for the earlier technical issues that I was experiencing from my house. Tonight, I'm pleased to share the School Division's capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2023 through 2027. Next slide. On the screen, you will see the FY 23 through 2027 5-year plan. One of the projects has been recently added to the plan for 23. That is the replacement of the middle school outdoor air units. And I'll explain all of these individually as we get going. As you can see, a few of the projects are over a number of years. One example in particular is the bus replacement in order to stay on a 12 to 15-year replacement cycle. Next slide. classroom HVAC units will continue over the next 4 years. We were fortunate to speed up the project last year because of the infusion of CARES funding. It's important to note that the original units operated on R22 refrigerant, which is now very scarce, and if you can find it, it's very costly to replace. New units are being will be operated on the R410A, which is much more economical and less noisy. Also, with these projects, closets are being installed in classrooms to kind of hide some of that noise for our class instruction taking place. Next slide. Upgrading the telecommunications system is a multi-year project. It actually began this year and will continue over the next 2 years. The original phone system will be upgraded to a voice-over internet protocol system throughout our 4 schools. It is industry standard and will provide increased accessibility and portability and scalability. Next slide. This is the project that I was speaking to earlier. The replacement of the outdoor air units at Manassas Park Middle School will improve the indoor air quality by bringing fresh air into the buildings. It will also provide cost savings, as it's going to be very expensive to repair any of those units. The current units are the original units from when the building opened in 2006. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned, maybe I didn't, this project is eligible for ESSER funds, matching funds, and this is an extremely important project as our units are now operating 24/7 because of the COVID outbreak. The middle school project has been approved for the use of the ESSER grant funds, and we anticipate being eligible for up toward $680,000 towards matching funds for the replacement. And we anticipate an RFP going out on the street in the next few weeks. Next slide. Resurfacing of the secondary parking lots in the bus loop for FY23. The elementary lots were resurfaced a few years ago. The secondary lots are showing their age, and it's recommended that complete milling and resurfacing occur in FY23. We have patched the pavement numerous times over the past decade, and to my best knowledge, the last time a complete resurface occurred was when the middle school opened in 2006. Next slide. These pictures illustrate the current locker situation in the team rooms at the high school. The men's team room currently, athletic teams currently have to share lockers. So you can see the picture on the left there. There's an example of, the picture on the right shows the current lockers, and we want to go to a system like the one on the left where we can install twice as many lockers in the locker room, so the athletes and the gym classes won't have to share lockers. Next slide. The CEF fencing project in Cougar Elementary School for FY23. This is another project that was almost completed last year. Fencing the wooded area behind the playgrounds will provide another layer of safety for our students. This has been somewhat of a safety concern over the past couple of years as we are starting to see more and more runners. Next slide. School bus replacement, which will take place every year between now and 27. Recommended replacement of school buses should occur every 12 to 15 years. The division currently has 4 buses that exceed the 15-year limit because we have not purchased any buses in the past 2 years. Our plan over the next 5 years is to replace 2 to 3 buses per year. In fact, we have 2 on order that we hope will be here at the beginning of April, so that will replace at least 2 of the 4 that have exceeded those 15 years. And we are using ESSER funds for that. Next slide. This is the entranceway to Manassas Park High School. This slide has been on a number of different presentations over the past probably 5 years. The high school entrance configuration is a project that will address a safety concern. As you can see, it's a rather large area, an area that is hard to view from the front office. The story is about students or individuals sliding into the building unnoticed or unrecognized. We do have some temporary options in place where we've installed a greeter at the top of the stairs there to welcome guests to our schools and ensure that they are escorted into the office to check in when they get there. So we're funneling them there by the greeter. Also, we have a bell system where any visitors that come to the school have to be buzzed into through the front doors. This project, we do have some drawings on this project, and we anticipate the cost being anywhere from $850,000 up. As Lee mentioned earlier, supply chain, the cost, inflation continue to rise. So the longer that we wait on this project, I think the more expensive it's going to continue to climb. Next slide. The high school fitness center is an area used by our students and PE, as well as our athletes in preparation for their athletic sporting events. The last refresh occurred in 2017 with very minimal upgrades to replace broken equipment. This is a heavily used area by students throughout the day and after school and even early morning area. And by 2024, this area will be ready for a facelift. Next slide. The Manassas Park Elementary School playground replacement for FY25. The playground equipment at MPES is approaching the end of the useful life cycle. This project will remove and replace the current playground and equipment, install safety servicing and borders. And this is an area that's not only used by our students throughout the day in PE and recess, but certainly it's used by our community members in Bloom's Crossing after hours and on the weekends. Next slide. This was referenced earlier. The school division currently occupies the back part of the middle school for transportation and our facilities departments. It's an area that we have outgrown. I'm very happy to report, and I think it was shared earlier, that we've had conversations with the city manager regarding a shared facility. We are very interested in doing so and moving forward with that type of project. What it would allow us to do is to convert that area in the middle school to additional classrooms. One of the things that we really are interested in doing moving forward is growing our career technical education program. We feel like this space would be a great space to build those classrooms. Next slide. Next slide, that's the maintenance. One more.
So
the last slide is to refresh and upgrade our outdoor lighting and our bus lot. LED lighting has been recently installed at the elementary and the secondary campuses. It's made a world of difference. By doing so, we've greatly improved the security for our buildings and the safety for our students, our staff, and our guests. Many of our transportation employees arrive prior to dawn and return after dark, some during the winter months. Upgrading the LED lighting in our parking lot at the bus loop or the bus lot, it would provide an added layer of safety and security for our transportation employees. And that concludes the school's capital improvement plan for FY23 through 27.
So what we'll do now is after each departmental section, we'll stop and see if anyone has any questions.
Okay.
So we don't have to wait. Does anyone have
Any questions? Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
So, Chief Lugo, are you on?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. In the first slide, see here is equipment that we install in our police vehicles. This is critical equipment that allows our officers to communicate and record critical information. Our current fleet, where we obtain our vehicles, cannot purchase this equipment. It has to be purchased directly by the city. So every year that we submit for new vehicles, we have to either replace this vehicle, replace some of this equipment, or upgrade it. So we anticipate about $91,000 for FY23 for the new equipment with the inflation. Next slide, please. This has been in our CIP for a while. It's a mobile command vehicle. We recently have experienced some failures at our police department for our dispatch center where we lost power and we had to transfer over to the county and the city. Kind of made it kind of hard for our dispatchers to do their job. But also this vehicle will provide the city public safety and any city operations the ability to use it for any disaster or criminal matter or fire structure that's going to be prolonged investigations or having our people out there for a while, or any big city events like, we held here, like National Night Out, 4th of July, any festivals that we might do, where we would think that this would help us to keep our city safe during this event. We expect hopefully timeline for FY 25 to 29 on hopefully on a lease purchase plan. Next, please.
Before we move on, I think one of the key items for this one is that backup dispatch center. Just to let you all know, just a few months ago, for some reason, the generator and the power both kind of failed. So we lost power to our dispatch. Luckily, we were able to address that, but that's one of my ongoing nightmares, that we lose our dispatch center. This would build a redundant system for that, where they could move to this vehicle and keep the dispatching services going. So it's a very important project in terms of redundancy, and then also kind of mobile command for major emergency management events where we need to be on the ground. So.
Great.
Our computer aid dispatch center was purchased back in 2005. It's already reached its end of life. We're having some issues with the new technology and software that we upgraded throughout the years. We have this timeline for FY 23 to 29. We are talking to our vendor that we currently are getting our report management system. So I'm hoping to have maybe some updated quotes on this and maybe a better price than the projected $350,000 that we have before you right now. So as soon as I get that, I'll be presenting that to the city manager. But our CAD system right now, we're having issues with it. It's old. The software is not the greatest, and it's hard to, it's not compatible with some of the software is what I'm trying to say. Next slide, please. One of the things that was brought up to me this year is our workstation, dispatch workstation. We currently have 3 of them up there, and it's over 15 years old. We're having some failures with the structure is falling apart, technology, and also some of the patch panels are falling apart, and we just had some power failures ever since that we lost power, as Mr. Papa just mentioned. We've been having some issues with getting power to these stations, and also it's a nightmare for IT to service this when they come in, because the way they're structured, they're not meant for easy access for IT. So we did get a quote from a vendor, and I believe it's the same ones that Prince William County uses, and it's about $73,000. Does not include an optional preventative maintenance contract, which, for the first year is $1,200, and up for how many years we would like to do that. They do the cleaning, anything breaks on it, they'll fix it, they'll come out, and any issues, any failures we would have, they would come out and figure out why. Next, please.
And just to add to this one too, you see the last sentence there, we want to have a better ergonomic solution for our employees. These employees work very long shifts, taking a lot of phone calls. We want to make sure they have adequate chairs to sit on, and also a raisable option. I know there was discussions for that with City Hall, but it's important that all of our employees who have to be sitting down for long hours, they have the option to stand up, for their back and for their well-being. So that's part of this program as well.
Great.
The next generation upgrades, they require us every 5 years, I believe, to do some upgrades to our Vista hardware and software. We are currently talking to a vendor about getting a web-based one, which should be cheaper. I'm not sure how much, but currently with the current vendor we have now is about $350,000, and it is due now. But we're looking at if we can wait a little bit. We might try to see if the city manager would like to delay this one a little bit and see if they have a web-based come out in the near future. It will allow us to, do upgrades easier, and it should work beyond the years of 5 years. Next slide, please. I brought this up last year. This was something that was brought up by our officers. We don't have any low light capabilities with the police department. As you know, crime is up in the area. We've had a lot of people flee from us. We've had runaways. We've had people missing. This will give us the ability to be able to see areas, wooded areas, dark areas, to be able to find somebody, especially if it's a missing juvenile or adult, but also allow our officers to approach a suspect that may be fled, that might be armed. So we, limit the amount of force we would have to use on an individual and maybe call them out, surround them and call them out instead of going in there with hardly any lighting and just a flashlight trying to locate somebody. 10 units, this is an expensive one. We did try to pitch it to our COG region to see if there was grant funding. Yeah, there is for some version of it, but they don't offer a whole lot in terms of money for it. So if we were lucky, we might get 1 unit, but I doubt this is going to get approved by them. So we would like to see this approved by the, hopefully by FY23. So the cost is about $150,000. Next slide, please. Armored vehicle. We used to have something that was similar to this. It was a little big. We ended up returning it back to the state. We do not have anything currently that would allow us to respond safely to any active shooter, barricade situation, to conduct any high-risk warrants or any regional disaster incident. This would also allow us to maybe serve some high-risk warrants, be able to call people out and protect our officers as they approach the house. The projected cost for this is about $375,000. The good thing about this one that it could be utilized by a fire department for any medical rescues that we would have to do, that we would work along with them. It has an adjustable fog and nozzle, water. You're able to deploy that if we have a fire structure, but the guy's armed in there and he's barricaded himself, we're able to at least get close and maybe put the fire out. And I think that's the end of my slides.
And just to add for this one, this is designed to be a domestic law enforcement vehicle. The prior vehicle we had was designed for IED fighting overseas. It was not designed for local law enforcement. So this is more specialized equipment to really enhance the capabilities of our local law enforcement.
Okay, great.
Any questions for police? Yes.
On this rescue vehicle, are there any in the area that we could borrow from, that if we didn't have one here?
Which vehicle?
Another jurisdiction, like does Fairfax County, Prince William County, Loudoun, does anybody have one that they would bring in it?
Yeah, which vehicle are you talking about? I'm sorry.
The tactical rescue.
Oh, the tactical vehicle.
Yeah, this one, yeah.
Okay. Chief, do you know? Yeah.
There is this thing called a RORC that they have as a regional asset that we're on it that we ever need it, but if we were to need it for certain things in our city, the time to get it here deployed, because they would have to deliver it on a trailer for us.
Yep.
It's not meant to go off road like this one. We can, pretty much go on, anywhere. There is a possibility that we can use that, but I'm not sure many agencies are going to give us their armored vehicle, unless we're using their SWAT team to come into our city or, from other jurisdictions.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chief. All right, next we have Fire. Adam Jones.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, Deputy Chief Jones with the Fire Department. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you all tonight. I'd like to start with the radio communications upgrades. So in our units, we have one mobile radio unit, and for those of you all that don't know, we're dispatched by Prince William County. So we also would like the opportunity to be able to be interoperable communications at the same time as being operable with Prince William County. So this would mean the second radio in our units to where we could communicate with both at the same time if need be. Next slide. This covers the upfits for the enterprise fleet that we have. As you can see earlier, I think that Chris touched on the battalion chief vehicle there in fiscal year 24, which is going to be an outright purchase, which we'll cover later through the enterprise fund. But this is also covering this slide. As I said, this slide is covering the upfit cost. I have this projected out through fiscal year 32. As you can imagine, with the current economy the way it is, as we get out past fiscal year 27, it's kind of hard to truly capture those numbers, but with the economy the way it is. So, next slide. All right, this covers our fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24. The first unit, fiscal year 23, is a 1994 Ford F-250 pickup truck, which is currently utilized as our brush truck. It has a skid unit on the back. And then fiscal year 24 covers a off-road specialty vehicle. We use it as our UTV use unit for instances such as 4th of July event down at Signage Park. We use it to also utilize it if someone gets lost at the park, Blooms Park, that sort of thing. This was purchased in 2012 off of a UASC grant and with the government, and it is reaching its age range to be replaced. Next slide. Here you see the EMS equipment. Last year we were able to purchase some of the equipment off of the funding provided through the state and federal government. This equipment is done through a process where we try to filter through where we have each unit is not purchased the same time every year or the same time yearly. So that way, our like for instance our Lucas device next year, we also have one that was purchased last year, so it's on a rotating time frame to where they rotate out every 8 years. Next slide. Same thing with the cardiac monitors. This is rotated. These monitors are rotated out every 8 years. So every 4 years, we'll be purchasing a new monitor through a lease purchase agreement. Also, once there is a goal to be able to purchase these outright should funding and stuff catch up for us. However, right now, as I said, we're on a 8-year rotation with these units. Next slide. The fire department admin vehicle here, fire chief vehicle, is the last vehicle that we purchased outright through CIP. Once this payment runs out in fiscal year 24, then we will continue with the enterprise purchase for this vehicle. Next slide. Ambulance replacement. This is covering the purchase of the medic unit, which we purchased this year. Unfortunately, it has not come in yet due to, thanks to Ford and their back order of units and the chips that go into the unit as well. And then the next replacement for the unit we currently run front out is fiscal year 26. Next slide. All right, fire truck replacement, that's set to be replaced coming up fiscal year 23. We'll be replacing the 2008 Pierce. And then fiscal year 30, we'll be replacing the 2017 Pierce. We actually submitted for the AFG grant last year for this purchase and did not receive it, so we're moving forward with the CIP for fiscal year 23. Next slide. Personal protective equipment. This is set on a 5-year basis. We have each firefighting personnel require 2 sets of PPE. It helps with cancer reduction. It allows for us to 5 years of frontline service and then 5 years of backup service. So every time we go into a fire and we're washing our gear, that deteriorates it more and more. So that way, after about 5 years, it goes to backup. So it's 10 years of life. Next slide. Self-contained breathing apparatus is the same. It's replaced every 10 years for the safety of its personnel. This next timeline coming up is fiscal year 25. We replaced it. The units we'll be replacing are from fiscal year 2015. Next slide. Radio replacement. This is slated for fiscal year 27. We have, however, submitted an AFG grant just recently to replace this equipment with the project cost. If the AFG grant does not come to fruition for us, then this will continue in the CIP for fiscal year 27. And I think that is it. No, okay, one more slide. Building renovation, and I'll let Mr. Palco jump on with this as well. He asked me to add this slide in there. You can see it's fiscal year 31. This little the justification as the firehouse ages and the city works to meet the minimum staffing needs. The building's updated to accommodate the staffing. This is us looking at the building and seeing that we are outgrowing our building, or we have outgrown our building, and there is a need to look to the future to plan to add bunk room, locker room, that sort of thing. With the current footprint that we have on the land that we have, there's no way to grow out, so there's more of a plan to grow upward, like the second and third floor. As you can see, the project cost of $10 million. This is just a, hey, this is coming up fiscal year 31 with such a big number as a plan.
Yeah, this goes back.
Do you have anything to add with that?
Absolutely, yeah. This goes back to kind of what I've been stressing, that in the 30s and 40s we're going to have a lot of facility renovation requirements. Unfortunately, this building was not built to even size kind of a minimum response element. I don't know the history about it, but it wasn't a long-term plan building. Our staffing levels, our goal, we did a comprehensive presentation in the governing body a few months ago where we talked about what's required for a minimum response for fire with the ladder truck, engine, and medic unit. And the goal is to try to build us towards that. This facility doesn't even allow us to get to that, but that's what should have been the plan back in the 2000s, is getting a building that meets minimum requirements. So I wanted to put this on your radar. This is kind of one of the big future kind of facility requirements that we have as a city. So I want to get it to you all in the governing body on your radar as early as possible. So when I keep talking about the need to save for the future, this is kind of one of those items as well that we need to really start planning for. And the goal beyond just this building is we're hopefully going to be advertising soon a general services administrator position, which is ARPA funded, to do a kind of a comprehensive asset management plan to look at all of our facilities, not just the fire station, but the police station, all of our schools. I already spoke with Dr. Saunders about this, teaming up and doing a comprehensive plan for all of our city facilities to understand what the life cycle requirements are of those buildings, where we're headed as a city, and then kind of what we need to do on an annual basis for maintenance, repair, replacement, upgrades, whatever is needed over the lifespan, so we can have a better picture for you all about the future needs of our facilities, because those are the largest drivers of city spending. Those are the reasons why we incur debt. So we want to properly manage at this time and properly plan when we incur debt in the future for these, to make sure we have a sustainable solution and we're not exceeding a 10% debt limit ceiling that the governing body set as a policy to not surpass, to keep a steady budget going. So that's why this is on there, because this is probably the biggest project that I kind of have in my mind for facilities in the future, and I want to get on everyone's radar. So
Great, thank you.
Any questions for Chief Jones? Okay,
good.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Okay, Jay?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So first up, we have the tennis and basketball court resurface project at Signal Hill Park. These projects come in at $134,000 and $85,000 respectively, and are proposed for fiscal year 25. Both tennis and basketball courts are in disrepair. They're both exhibiting severe and recurrent cracking. In addition to slip, trip, and fall hazards, functionality and competitive play have become difficult due to the size and scope of the cracks. The court's overall condition is just all around poor. In this project, the pavement will be completely milled and resurfaced. Official court lines will be painted per each sport's respective regulations. And the tennis court will actually also receive new fencing around the entire perimeter of the court. The next project is the banquet hall AV equipment video conferencing add-on. This comes in at $61,000 and is proposed for FY24. This project is intended to supplement the recent banquet hall AV refresh that was approved as part of the FY22 capital budget. This add-on would support the addition of 20 new microphones, 2 cameras, 1 control panel, and 1 tablet. All new equipment would be seamlessly tied into the existing system, allowing for much greater level of functionality and versatility. Given the preference and the need for companies to allow for, or at least support, more virtual meeting options as we move forward, this feature should make us a little more competitive when promoting our banquet rental space to potential customers. The next project is the banquet hall floor replacement. This comes in at $40,000 and is proposed for FY23. At this point, the banquet hall flooring has exceeded 12 years in age. It's endured a tremendous amount of wear and tear in the process, especially over the last 3 or 4 years. There are a number of imperfections in place, ranging from scratches, scuffs, tears, even down to issues with the clear coat and overall appearance. The banquet hall is one of our most popular and profitable rental spaces, so we certainly want to take care of this space and keep it in as solid as condition as we're able to. It's also probably our most diverse rental space in terms of the type of events that we're able to attract. So the existing flooring is marmoleum, which is a type of linoleum. The goal here is to go ahead and remove that and replace it with a long-term durable replacement material. We've explored several options in terms of the replacement material to include polished concrete, linoleum, carpet, and vinyl. Just want to point out, after receiving a recent quote, we're revising this cost projection down to $40,000. I'll go ahead and make this adjustment with Tony tomorrow, but I wanted to kind of just make you aware that this will drop about $20K, regardless of the material type that we go with. Next up is the MPCC and Signal Bay Water Park furniture refresh. These projects come in at $60,000 and $50,000 respectively, and are proposed for FY23 and FY24. The banquet hall furniture is over 12 years old, while the water park furniture has exceeded 20 years in age. Stain and frayed upholstery, tattered and unraveled chair straps, cracked and bent tables, compromised frames, faulty legs, worn skids are some of the common problems that we're seeing at each respective location. At the community center, we're looking to procure and replace 30 round tables. These are our traditional banquet tables, 30 6x2 rectangular tables, and 230 upholstered banquet hall chairs. While at the water park, we're looking at 100 Chase lounge chairs, 50 dining chairs, and 20 picnic tables. The banquet hall and water park are both very popular amenities, and they both generate, significant revenue for the department and the city. So I think these furniture upgrades would enhance our ability to market each of those spaces more effectively. Next up is the Costello Park retaining wall demo and rebuild and basketball court resurface. These projects come in at $135,000 and $98,000 respectively, and are both proposed for FY24. So the retaining wall, this picture here, is at the intersection of Spruce and Adams, bordering an outdoor basketball court. Parts of this wall continue to disintegrate. Chunks of stone and mortar are falling into the adjacent sidewalk or street, which create hazards for nearby pedestrians and motorists. The stopgap you see was implemented several years ago and has held up quite well. But again, the intention was just to kind of mitigate the risk. It wasn't necessarily intended to be a long-term measure, and it's certainly not a aesthetically pleasing measure. So the goal here is to demo the existing wall, remove all the debris, and add a new segmental retaining wall that will be rebuilt in the current footprint. In addition, we'll be milling up the asphalt basketball court, removing the dilapidated fencing that surrounds the court, and then resurfacing the entire surface with prior to installing a new vinyl coated chain link fence around the entire court. The court's inundated with cracks and crevices and fractures, essentially kind of makes competitive play impossible. Court lines are faded, so they're difficult to see. And the fence is very worn and distressed. Kind of one key item to point out here is, given the nature and scope of these projects, they really should ideally be performed in concert, just because the two contractors will have to work closely together in order to kind of complete both jobs, in succession. Next up is the Polk Park Playground and Basketball Court upgrade. This project comes in at $65,000 and is proposed for FY24. The playground at Polk Park is over 20 years old now, and it's definitely reached the end of its useful life cycle. Due to the age of the equipment, it's become increasingly more difficult to find suitable parts, making safety and functionality significant concerns. The basketball court is also in disrepair and in serious need of attention. Cracks are widespread. There are frequent trip fall hazards, and functionality is impacted. Current playground equipment will be removed and replaced with brand new structure for ages 2 to 5. Safety surfacing will be added, borders will be added. The court will then be milled and resurfaced. New lines will be painted, and we'll add 2 new basketball hoops and install on the original footprint. Next up is the Wellness Center strength equipment purchase. This project comes in at $124,000 and is proposed for FY24. By this year, by the year 24, I should say, the existing line of strength equipment will have been in operation for 10 to 14 years, depending on which specific pieces. But again, the youngest pieces will be at least 10 years old. Industry standards suggest replacement every 7 to 10 years, especially given the high cost of repairs and the frequent downtime that is prevalent once units start to hit the end of their useful life cycle. The current equipment will be replaced with new modernized units to include selectorized machines, plate-loaded units, dumbbells, cable cross system, and a functional trainer. Next up is the Costello Park walking path bollard replacement. This project comes in at $24,000 and is proposed for FY24. So the current light bollards that border sections of the walking path around Costello Park that are in close proximity to the community center are very worn and distressed and in need of replacement. 4 of the bollards have been capped and removed just due to issues that are pretty much we're unable to fix without completely replacing the unit. 6 more are structurally unsound and on the verge of being taken offline. Out of the 21 total, we've got kind of 10 already that are either offline or about to go offline. Due to the age of these units, like-for-like replacement is no longer feasible. The goal here is to remove the existing bollards from the trail and replace with 7 energy-efficient LED options. 5 of the 7 we would have fixed to the existing parking lot poles in the rear admin parking lot, while 2 more would be attached directly to the community center structure. This should mirror, if not enhance, the current level of illumination that's in place. But the nice thing here is the lights should last much longer and definitely provide a much greater level of energy efficiency in the long run. Next projects, the perimeter caulk white coat replacement projects. These come in at $26,000, $28,000, and $73,000 respectively. Those are 2 perimeter caulk projects in 24 and 29 and 1 white coat project in 24. The caulk line surrounding the activity pool in Lazy River needs to be removed and replaced. This was last done in 2015, but it's recommended to be completed every 2 to 5 years. If this caulk line is compromised, basically we risk, water seeping into the joints, which can ultimately cause beam and concrete damage. Similarly, the Lazy River white coat will need to be removed and replaced in 24 as well. This was also last done in 2015. This type of work is recommended every 7 to 8 years. And again, along the same lines to the perimeter caulk project, we really want to prevent the water from reaching the joints, which can create structural issues and create more of a concrete beam damage situation. Next project, the indoor pool deck recoat and heater replacement. These projects come in at $36,000 and $48,000 respectively and are proposed for FY23 and FY25. This is the original deck from when the new community center opened in 2010. As the deck ages, the texture is compromised, and we risk, additional slip, trip, and falls hazards. they would just go in, grind down the loose texture, repair the epoxy cracks, and just recoat with a new skid-resistant material. This is another slide I wanted to make mention. We had listed $22K here. However, we just received an updated proposal earlier this week, and we will need to modify this price accordingly. That's why I had mentioned over the call here $36,000 as opposed to the 22 listed in this slide. But I'll certainly get that updated with Tony tomorrow as well. And in terms of the heaters, these were last replaced in FY17. They're also approaching the end of their useful life cycle. 2 heaters are assigned to the pool, 1 to the spa. Without these heaters in place, the spa completely loses functionality, whereas the pool is unable to require set point temp, because we always require a 2-degree difference between the air temp and the water temp, which ultimately provokes condensation and ultimately water loss. Like last year, we had mentioned if we're unable to make it to 25, we may request emergency procurement on this particular project. Next up is the outpost spray cannon and safety matting replacement projects. These come in at $375,000, $40,000, and $25,000 respectively, and are proposed for FY25. So after 26 years in operation, the outpost is beginning to really degrade and deteriorate. One of the water park's most popular and largest activity features. It really does serve as the centerpiece of the facility. But after 2 decades of wear and tear, exposure to the elements, full replacement at this point is really imminent and necessary. Water cannons are also in dire need of replacement. We see frequent leaks. There's lack of manual control. Essentially, there's a steady stream, whereas they're designed to allow the user to be able to manually control the cannons. That feature no longer exists. And they're even prone to harboring bees' nests due to kind of the antiquated design, which is certainly a safety risk. One of the 4 cannons has actually also been permanently taken offline due to kind of a more systemic pipe issue that would require us to demo a large section of the pool deck in order to fix that particular cannon. And lastly, the safety matting throughout the activity pool needs to be removed and replaced. This includes 6 water slide landing pads, 4 crossing activity mats, and 1 custom mat, basically 11 in total. Again, after 15 years of exposure, the mats are discolored, the paint's chipping, cracks are beginning to form, and they're just in general disrepair. Next project is the Signage Water Park Bathhouse, Pump Room, and Pool Office Demo and Rebuild. This project comes in at $1.2 million and is proposed for FY25. The bathhouse, pump room, and pool office have really reached the end of their useful lifespan. Bathhouse is not up to code or ADA compliant. Electrical components are failing. The cinder block walls are cracking. Ventilation is inadequate and unreliable. Oftentimes, roof has leaks. The pump room is outdated and dilapidated. So the current facility will need to be demoed and rebuilt in the current footprint. Next project is the bus replacement. This comes in at $68,000 and is proposed for FY26. The bus is at the end of its useful life cycle. It's already endured significant repairs over the last 2 years, one of which was a transmission issue. The vehicle is predominantly used to support senior-based services and is our only ADA accessible vehicle in the fleet. Next project is the zero-turn mower replacement. This project comes in at $14,000 in FY24 and $28,000 in FY25. The Parks Division maintains just under 80 acres of mowable space, so they rely heavily on these zero-turn mowers to really manage the significant mowing obligations at 6 parks throughout the city. By 24-25, we are scheduled to hit industry standard for hours of operation on the 2 units, and we're looking to replace 1 unit in 24. Basically, the unit in 24 was purchased a year prior to the 2 in 25, so that's why we're kind of spacing those out. Next project is the Blooms Park Trail Restoration. This comes in at $1 million and is proposed for FY26. So the current trail at Blooms Park is in disrepair. There's large cracks and fractures throughout the trail. Some places, sections of asphalt are totally displaced and detached. The trail is inherently rugged and provides for a pretty challenging, hike. But the frequent changes in grade and the deterioration, is only going to further enhance the risk for trips and falls as we move forward. In this project, we're looking to basically mill out and approximately 5 miles of trail, completely resurface. And since we've recently expanded the trail system to include several shortcuts, this quote was modified from last year. We came in last year a little over $700,000, but again, that was based off of a little under 3.5 miles of asphalt trail. Next project, and the final CIP project for Parks and Rec, is the downtown library establishment. This comes in at $425,000 and is proposed for next fiscal year. So over the next year, the library will transition from Blooms Park to a much larger, robust 8,000 square foot space in the city's new downtown. This project encompasses FFE, opening day collection, facility design, and technology costs associated with that move and that setup. And basically will, a combination of those 4 categories, kind of make up that aggregate $425,000. This was a 2-year CIP project, back to back, and currently in FY22, $400,000 has been earmarked to also address needs related to this project.
Any questions for Jay?
I have a comment. I didn't see anything about skate parks.
That's still in our, it's in our spreadsheet. It's it's one of those desired projects that we have. It's a very expensive project.
That's a real concern for me, so.
I think we'll continue to explore grant opportunities for that, but we understand there is some value to it. We weren't able to fit it. We haven't been able to fit it in the last few years in our CIP. Yeah. But,
I'll keep hammering.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you guys can certainly push the governing body to
I will keep
bring that one up.
hammering.
We keep it in the spreadsheet just, to keep awareness of the project
Keep
that
it up
it is
there.
valued. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Thank you.
What's the cost of a skate park?
Thanks, Jay.
Jay, do you know the cost of the skate park off the top of your head?
Yes, sir. So, well, I do and I don't. I know what it was a few years ago when I looked at an update with some of the new price increases. Don't hold me to this, but it was around $160,000 to accommodate about a 3,000 square foot pour-in-place concrete style park.
We can do it. It's
We'll have
just-
some bake sales.
Yeah, that's more kind of an expansion, where you can see most of our projects are about kind of maintenance
Yep.
of what we have. But it's something, again, if the planning commission really wants it. We have looked at grant opportunities as well, and that's something we'll keep our eyes open for. We first focused our grant applications on the trail network for Signal Hill Park. We didn't get that grant, unfortunately, but we'll keep evaluating other federal grants for Parks and Rec level functions, and our grant managers actually believe that the skate park might be one that actually could be successful in securing a federal
Well,
grant.
just remember, Costello Park and Signal Hill, we don't need one, we need 2.
Too, okay. We hear you. All right.
We don't want kids crossing Route 28 on their skateboards to
Yeah.
get over there.
Once the library moves, what will become of the transitional space in Blooms Park?
We need it for temporary office space. The city hall was designated, or initially was planned for 4 levels to meet kind of the programming requirements of the city. The final comprehensive agreement was signed just a few months after COVID happened, and everyone was looking at Great Depression level style recession. So the city, we were concerned about whether the development was going to be successful. So the one of the levels of the 4th floor was removed. So it's a 3-story building now. The goal is to secure some additional office space as part of the movie theater development. So it'd be right across the street from the city hall, so where the current city hall is located. And also to secure the building for the community development department, public works and community development, because we do staff some of them here at City Hall as well. But in the interim, over the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to have to use that as extra office annex space for City Hall. And then after that, we'll reevaluate and see if it can be utilized for party rentals, wedding rentals, things like that.
Okay.
Any other questions for Parks and Rec? Okay, excellent. All right, and then we'll end it with Calvin.
We're going to look at the general fund projects. The community development fleet needs that fall outside of the enterprise lease program. Our community development public works vehicles, these are the vehicles that either can't be obtained by enterprise because of their size or specialty types of equipment that just happen to be license plates. But there's no cost in FY23. These are very large vehicles, $863,000 over 5 years. One of the biggest expenditures in this category is we have 2 flusher trucks in the city. We are not allowed to use our stormwater flusher truck, sanitary sewer flusher truck for stormwater activities unless there was some sort of sterilization procedure. We looked into that when we had this issue and it wasn't really feasible. So we have had 2 flusher trucks since. The water sewer flusher truck is by far the oldest. That one's currently, well, the gun on it for hydro excavation is currently out of service. We broke that on a water break last week. But that is why you see $479,000 out of the water sewer enterprise fund as compared to $249 out of the general fund. Not a typical split for buying equipment, but that's because this large flusher truck is 100% out of water and sewer. Again, $134,000 out of stormwater too, because most of these vehicles and equipment that we purchase are split 40-40-20 between general fund, water sewer fund, and stormwater fund. Vehicle 7007 is a large dump truck that will replace an existing large dump truck in FY24 for $173,000. There is that flusher truck we were mentioning, 7008, will replace PW 142. That is also in 24 at $344,000. Another large dump truck, 7014 in FY26 at $155,000. The reason that the first dump truck is more expensive is because we need at least one tandem axle dump truck. We have always run single axle dump trucks, but we have been hauling a lot more spoils and a lot more fill materials. And without a tandem axle, we found some of the quarries won't fill us up with certain materials, significant weight. So we want at least one tandem so that we can do our own hauling. We had incredible expenses on Scott Drive because we didn't have a tandem axle to haul our own materials, so we had to pay somebody else to do it. So that's why you see the cost difference there. 7015 is a small dump truck. We'll replace an existing small dump truck, number 159. And then we are planning for FY26 for a new street sweeper. We bought a street sweeper 5 years ago. We've already had some vacuum repairs to it. So we're not 100% certain that we're going to get, I think the sweeper we had last time we got 20 or 21 years out of. But this doesn't look like we're going to get that kind of life out of the sweeper anymore. So we're going ahead and planning for replacement in FY26. That one is split directly between general fund and stormwater. We get TMDL reduction credits for sweeping the streets. So it's part of our stormwater program. We also have a commitment in our comprehensive plan to maintain the streets by sweeping, so that part comes out of the general fund. Public works equipment, this is in general all the tools, major large-scale tools and equipment that we use for public works, things that cost over $5,000. $119,000 in FY23. Again, you can see the split, $28,000 from the general fund, $28,000 from water sewer. And in this case, we have some specialty equipment for the stormwater division, so $62,000 from the stormwater enterprise fund, $467,000 in equipment over 5 years. The 12-inch chipper is one of those specialty pieces of equipment that is primarily out of the stormwater fund, because we primarily use chippers for pond maintenance, stormwater easement area maintenance, taking down small to medium-sized trees. A mini excavator. We have backhoe. Currently have our old backhoe and a new backhoe, but a mini excavator, especially when we're dealing on the private property, maintenance of laterals and things like that, to have a mini X to be able to go in and be less disruptive, tows easier, is easier to load, allows for less damage, smaller excavation areas. So we've never had a mini X in Public Works before, but it's been on our list of needed equipment for about 5-6 years. So we're happy to finally see it coming on board in FY23 at $69,000. Our rubber tire loader, that's just a direct replacement. Our existing rubber tire loader's aging and we keep having hydraulics issues on it. It's time to replace it. 3 light towers, again, another piece of equipment that we have gotten amazing life out of. I think we decided in a CIP meeting this year that the light towers we have are over 15 years old. So we've gotten great life out of them, and we're going to try to extend them to 2026, but both the mechanic and the superintendent are begging me right now to try to advance this and schedule, because we're having issues with the motors on the light towers. They're gasoline motors, so they're both a generator and a light tower all in one. Towable air compressor, we use that for our hand hammer, our jackhammers. Again, the towable air compressor has power on it, has a generator built into it, so you know, when we're doing any sort of street excavation, breaking sidewalk, breaking asphalt, we're using this towable air compressor. Skid steer track machine that we always have a Bobcat. We use it for loading salt. We use it for loading spreaders onto trucks. We use Bobcat pretty much every day in our operations. They don't last long loading salt. That's what we've learned. You pull them into the salt shed all winter and drive them around in salt, and it doesn't matter how much you rinse them off, they rust out. So the last one was like a Flintstones vehicle. You were just staring at the ground through the bottom of the skid steer. Correlators and data loggers. This is one pays for itself. This is our listening equipment to track down brakes. It is not a hefty cost. We have had, we bought this existing equipment, these existing correlators 3 years ago. They have drastically improved our leak detection process. These are the correlators are a type of equipment, you can leave them out all night. They listen for leak noise in the middle of the night when the streets are quiet. They give you an estimation of between which two devices where the leak might be. Then you come out and you've got a much smaller area to start your investigation with more pinpointing equipment. But $40,000 pays for itself in just water loss alone. But we want to keep updating this equipment, keep the latest equipment, because especially if you don't have a good correlator to put you directly on a leak and you wind up spending hours opening up the pavement trying to find it. You lose a lot of time and equipment costs in those activities. So this is worth all the money we can spend on it. Miscellaneous projects, property demolition. We have taken down 2 houses in the past year that were declared unsafe, unfit for human habitation, and the owners failed to comply with notices to demolish. The process is quite lengthy. Starts with a notice of violation. If they don't comply with a notice of violation, they typically get a final notice of violation. Each of these coming with 30 to 60-day correction periods. If they do not correct the violations and the house is declared unsafe or unfit, we will try to secure it to keep kids and animals out of it, but eventually we will issue an order to demolish. If the order to demolish is not followed, then we are left with no choice but to remove the hazard. So we're looking now to carry $25,000 every year for such activities, should we need the money there. Hopefully we don't need it, but we need a way to pay for these initiatives when they pop up. Connor Center Master Rehab Plan. The Connor Center, according to city historians, saved the city. We're having financial problems, and creating the industrial district definitely saved the city at one point, but there's a lot of corrugated piping, stormwater piping, conveying stormwater throughout the Connor Center, most of which we have discovered is undersized by modern engineering principles. We learned that with the Safe Routes project first, I think, then again with Atlas Plumbing's renovations. We have a lot of collapsing corrugated metal, not just in driveway entrances, but in our general stormwater conveyance system. If you drive down a hill, you're probably finding a private sewage lift station. Many of the businesses in the Connor Center have private sewage lift stations, which means the owner of the business is responsible for maintaining a sewage pumping system that pumps uphill to a main. They're not usually familiar with it. We see a lot of properties change hands. We've had some major spills because people see water flowing up out of a pit, and then they put a sump pump down in it and pump. One time they were pumping it right into a storm pond. So we don't feel very comfortable. We deal with these quite often. You know, the owner is guilty of a spill and has to clean it up, but we have to make sure that it's contained. So we use a lot of staff resources to go out and lay out booms. We use a lot of time and effort trying to track down the owners and get them to understand and comply. So the sewer system needs to be looked at. I think we would be more comfortable if we converted to public lift stations where we maintain them. Of course, it's a cost, but when you look at all the hours we spend and the number of sewage spills we've had, it probably makes more logical sense. And how we would fund that, we'll have to look into that as this Connor Center Master Rehab Plan develops. But this would look at all of the underground utilities, stormwater, water, and sewer, and also look at the roadway infrastructure so that we are planning utilities projects with resurfacing operations, with new roadway construction, so that we have a plan laid out so that we're not throwing good money after bad as we resurface roads and things like that. $200,000 in FY25. That's our best estimate to get an actual master utility rehabilitation plan for the Connor Center. These are Water Sewer Enterprise Fund projects that are primarily funded out of the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund. This is the annual ongoing RUMS line, repairs, replacements, upgrades, and maintenance. It's where we carry a very large figure for things such as lift station pump failures, force main ruptures, valve replacements in force mains, things that are going to cost immediately because of the nature of the beast. They're going to cost over $10,000 a pop. This would cover generator failures at your pump stations and lift stations. This would cover major electrical equipment outages, failures at your pump stations and lift stations, major piping and valve repairs in the streets, especially with our 20-inch mains, large-sized water mains that can cause catastrophic damage if they're not mitigated as quickly as possible. $840,000 in FY23, $3 million over 5 years. We typically don't spend all of the money because we don't have as many emergencies, but we have to have money set aside for these emergencies when they pop up. But some years, this coming year, we have major water tank renovations, things that we need to do to our water tanks to renovate them, get them cleaned and painted. So we'll see some significant expenditures in FY23 out of this line for sure. Community development gravel easement roads. We have a lot of sanitary sewer, water, and stormwater easements throughout the city that run back behind properties through wooded areas. None of these areas were provided with gravel easement roads. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Uosa Force Main that runs up next to the Mosby subdivisions. But that's the kind of thing we're talking about, a gravel access road where it doesn't become grown up with vegetation, so that you always have the proper width to get vehicles in and out for maintenance operations. So you can get flusher trucks in there, you can get hydro excavators in there, you can get large equipment in there. This project would be intended to provide gravel easement roads wherever we need them to access our utilities that are off the beaten path. This project cost is estimated $600,000, $400,000 from the water and sewer fund, and $200,000 from the stormwater fund, and we're looking to do this in FY26. Phased water system improvements. Phase 5 was some new meter vaults in the city of Manassas and some new lines under the streets to distribute that water from Stonewall Park, meter vault there, and one next to the Public Works building. In Manassas, Phase 6, 7, and 8 are all focused on high break rate areas on the west end of town where the cast piping is now 70 years old plus. We have substantial break rates in certain areas. So phases 6, 7, and 8 look at those high break rate areas and schedule full-on water delivery system replacement projects through there. Phases 9 and 10, we are reserving for potential upgrades related to either development or related to potential capacity negotiations, because we are about to enter into a phase where our capacity agreements will need to be relooked at, and depending on what arrangements we can make with our neighbors, we want to have the ability to make pump station improvements or construct new pump stations to best utilize the money towards the proper capacity agreement. I thought we had another.
I don't think it made it in. Yeah. We'll get it in for next time.
Okay. But anyways, the Phase 6 is already designed, has been designed for some time. We've just been waiting on the money to actually execute the repair. Phase 6 is focused on a small section of Lambert between Yost and Martin, and then piping along Martin and Yost. So imagine a triangle with those streets. That is the Phase 6 water system improvements. And off the top of my head, I believe Phase 7 deals with Manassas Drive between Cabell and Denver. Don't quote me on that though, I'm just trying to go by memory. But Phase 6, 7, and 8, we do have locations, and they are all removal of aging cast iron piping with high break rates. The SCADA system project, we had a SCADA system installed in the city 2010-ish. We had a significant error by the design engineers that left us with a newly installed radio system that did not communicate. We spent some time in litigation over that incident with both, I guess all three of us, all three parties were in potential litigation with each other, the designer, the contractor who built the project, and the city. We took us a long time to finalize the blame and throw it on the appropriate party. But the SCADA system, turns out that after all of that effort, was a proprietary system. The company that designed that proprietary system has since dissolved, so even though we were able to negotiate a software support agreement after the litigation, it doesn't do us any good when the company doesn't exist. So our SCADA system is slowly turning into a very buzzy, loud paperweight because we have no one to maintain the software. There's no ability to maintain the program at this point. So in FY25, we're looking to spend $1 million towards replacing the existing SCADA system. Stormwater Enterprise Fund projects, again, these are projects where the funding primarily comes out of the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. This enterprise fund also has a RUMS line for major repairs, replacement, upgrades, and maintenance. Cost of $1.27 million, over 5 years, $395,000 in FY23. And this is an ongoing yearly line item in the CIP. Connor Center maintenance projects. These are projects that we already know. These are primarily collapsing galvanized corrugated metal pipe. These pictures represent an issue that has at this point been fixed. We finished that project this year, but there are many more like this throughout the Connor Center, where sinkholes are developing, people are losing portions of their parking lots due to our corrugated metal conveyance system. $103,000 for this series of projects in FY23 and $539,000 over 5 years. TMDL reduction projects, these stem from the Chesapeake Bay Act, are mandated by EPA, handed down to state DEQ, and then trickle down to all the MS4 permit holders in the state of Virginia. This TMDL is total daily load of phosphorus, nitrogen, suspended solids that we can contribute to the stream. This is actually projects geared to reduce what we currently put into the streams from our municipal bounds. Connor Center Pond 1 retrofit is an already designed project that we have SLAF grant money for. We have delayed that project because the development here, this development area, the drainage area, a lot of it comes from this general area and drains back into Pond 1. So until this is completed and this area is stabilized, we don't want to go doing any massive improvements to Pond 1. But Pond 1 got us to our 5% first round TMDL reduction requirements. We're looking at Russia Branch stream restoration as a potential to get a significant portion of the remaining reductions. Our next reduction is 40% of our TMDL, and that's due in 25 or 23.
24, I think, 24.
It's 23, then 28 is for the last round, which is actually 90% reductions.
Wow.
But again, Russia Branch stream restoration, a very expensive project. We have estimated anywhere from 14 to 22 million for total TMDL reduction to meet the 28 requirements. And then other TMDL projects, this is a line that we keep. We don't know what it's going to take when we do complete major projects. We always know that because you're trying to reduce 3 pollutants, you can probably reduce 1 or 2 of those, 100% of the requirement through certain projects, but projects don't evenly remove suspended solids, nitrogen, and phosphorus. From our recent discussions, it sounds like even if we were to execute substantial stream restoration, we still have a lot of nitrogen loading to take care of, so we have to have a line that addresses specifically those projects that will make up that balance when we're done with the major projects, getting us to a total compliance situation. $0 in FY23, but $21.5 million over 5 years. As Laszlo said earlier, hopefully we can drastically reduce that number. But we have ranged anywhere from 14 million to 22 million in house estimates, and we won't know for sure until we actually have preliminary design on some of these projects. BMP pond evaluation, this is another DEQ mandate. This is going to start being a requirement of our MS4 permit to actually have surveyed plans of all of our city-owned stormwater ponds and treatment facilities. We do have some of the ponds that the city owns in site plan format. They, of course, since, over the years, since the time that they were constructed, have experienced all levels of sedimentation and need dredging, but part of this requirement is to ensure that we're keeping them in design, up to their design standards. The only way we can get there with having only Some of them actually in site plan format, some of them we don't even have original plans for anymore, is to have an engineer come out, survey the ponds, look at the drainage areas, approximate what the capacity was intended to be, and put together, real plans for all of the city-owned ponds. We're anticipating $50,000. We're hoping that that's going to suffice, but we need to get this done before it becomes a requirement of our actual annual submission. So this is FY '23. Any questions?
I have one. Funniest thing. All the way back to your property demolition, so far you've been able to do it in-house?
No, we were able to take down one house using staff resources. It was not our preferred method, but we actually had a substantial collapse overnight as we already had bids in hand. We were simply waiting to vet those bids and release a contract. And then we had a substantial partial collapse of that structure that opened up the interior to the front yard. We had to deal with it quickly. In-house resources was the most efficient and quickest way to get it taken care of. However, the last one we did, we were able to actually get the contractor on.
So you outsourced?
Yeah.
Okay.
But not actually RFPs. These were not $100,000, $200,000 plus jobs, but requests for quotations were issued. So the last one was done using third party.
Yeah, well, when you only have 25,000, I mean, does it come more than that? How do we fund it if it comes out more than that?
We're using 25,000 is because that's
A base?
that's what that's slightly more than the last contract we executed. And that house had a basement, so there was an aspect of fill and regrading that went along with that. So we're just hoping that, we know what the price quotes were for that. Now, what inflation will do to that over the next several years, we can't anticipate. But if we had a house to take down and it didn't have a basement, I would still hope it would come in under 25,000 because it wouldn't have that aspect of fill and regrading along with it. So,
Do we have any properties now that
not that I
are
don't
sitting
have
there?
any declared unsafe or unfit right now.
Okay.
And that's always the prerequisite. I have to, as the code official, I have to declare it unsafe or unfit for human habitation. We're not tearing these houses down to claim the property. The property still belongs to the owner. We're just mitigating a hazard.
So that could take years with deterioration. I mean, you don't, once it becomes vacant and maybe not,
Vacant and secured is not an unsafe structure. That's why if it's just a vacant structure.
yeah, it just has to wait.
You'll see Public Works go out and board the house up. Because once it's secured, it's not inherently unsafe. If it doesn't have any other structural deficiencies and it's not being served by utilities, as long as it's not open to children,
Safety
looters,
hazard.
Animals,
Yep.
then there's no reason to tear it down. But if there are visible underlying structural issues that put it in imminent danger of collapse, or if there's unsafe equipment and we can't get the owners to cooperate with disconnecting utilities to mitigate those hazards, that's where you have to start looking as, am I gonna have to declare this house unsafe or unfit? And then you have to take action if the owners won't correct the
And then there's a
violation.
process that starts and
Right.
finishes way down there, yeah.
Yeah, there are some homes that have some disrepair that we're tracking from a code enforcement standpoint, but we're also planning on connecting them with our new housing coordinator, who's working with nonprofits who can help out with doing those repairs to prevent it from ever getting to this point. So that's kind of the
Good.
new program we have coming out.
That's the signage we see on the electronic sign?
That's different. That's for the mortgage relief
Oh,
and rent
okay.
relief program. So the state has a lot of that money, so we're helping connect. We also have some money set aside from ARPA to help any of our residents who, and the actual application is going to be going online here, I think, next week.
Super.
So that people can apply for relief. But we've been
Good.
contacting people. The majority of people so far are looking for water and sewer relief, and luckily we have a program for that through ARPA as well, where the state gave us some money. So we are connecting people with the treasurer to do some relief there, but there are some people who are looking for rent and mortgage as well.
That's good.
And a key item to remember with these expenditures is that under state law, they do become liens against the property. So when the property changes
Sold,
hands, the
yep.
city should be able to recover
Yeah.
its costs in the demolition process. So, although it is an expenditure to mitigate a hazard now, hopefully the
Get it
city's made
recouped.
whole when the property changes hands.
Any other questions for Calvin?
Questions?
If not, I just want to, thanks Calvin, I just want to add that this CIP model doesn't have revenues. So
Okay.
I usually finalize revenues for the city by the end of March. That's when I get the real estate assessment data. And when I do that, then I finalize my model for growth and everything else. And I see what years we can really get these projects done. And sometimes I have to move around things to kind of balance the budget. So
Sure.
this is just more of a comprehensive view of all the projects and the tentative timelines based off last year's model, but that's subject to change depending on our financial forecast for revenues.
Okay, very good.
And I'll let you guys know in the March meeting. So
So
I'm sorry,
that's
March
six.
meeting, I'll brief ARPA, kind of what the ARPA capital projects are.
And then
Then the
April.
April meeting, I'll let you know kind of where our revenues stand and what the final recommended timelines are for these projects.
Very good. Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the presentation this evening.
Thank you.
With that, I'll close the public meeting. The time is 10:12. We have no unfinished business for this evening. We have no report of any special committees. And Administrator Barry, if you'd like to offer any update from committee development?
Yes, just real quickly, I don't
Sure.
want to detain anybody.
That's
this
okay.
evening, but we are moving forward on several of the downtown redevelopment projects and site plans, so those will be coming forward to you sometime this year. Most recently, we did receive the Phase 4 rezoning, which is the terminus of Connor Drive, the eastern terminus where the industrial properties are.
Okay.
So we did receive that. The Phase 2 residential for Village at Manassas Park, just the remaining 2 over 2 townhomes. It should be coming to you within the next few months. The site plan does not really have any outstanding comments, so that should be moving through and being brought forward to you again in the next month or two. And we did receive the VRE the site plan for the VRE
The
parking garage.
Yeah.
So
Good.
that will also be working its way through the process, and
Cool.
I'm assuming we will bring that to you probably maybe in the summer, if not earlier.
Good.
And I believe Laszlo already mentioned this, but we did issue the building permits for 3 of the 2 over 2s for the Phase 1. So
Great.
we'll start to see some residential construction
Cool.
fairly quickly.
Great.
So we're really excited about that.
Start to really pick up speed there.
Coming together.
Good.
Did anybody have any questions or anything? Concern or?
Nope. We're great. Good, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, thank you.
And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Motion carries unanimously. The time is 10:14.